Today we explore the world of a mysterious creature that has existed throughout the long history of humanity. This creature is not immortal, but it is reborn in a new form each time it dies. Unlike other creatures, it keeps all the memories of its past lives. It has lived as many different beings. A fish swimming in deep waters, an eagle soaring high in the sky, a tiny ant working in a colony, and even a massive dinosaur ruling the ancient lands are all forms of this creature. Despite the Earth changing over time, this creature has always survived. It has even survived the great extinction which wiped out all dinosaurs. It is trapped in an endless cycle of death and rebirth. It has experienced life through many forms. There is one thing it despises the most in all of its lifetimes, which is humans. The natural order is simple to this creature. The strong survive while the weak perish. When it is eaten by a more powerful predator, it understands as that is the way of nature. But humans are different. They do not just kill for survival. They take lives for sport, for greed, or for pleasure. This makes them the most detestable beings the creature has ever encountered. Yet no matter how much it loathes them, it cannot defeat them. Humans have always possessed the most advanced and evolving weapons. That is the power of humanity. They are at the very top of the food chain. The creature's hatred for humans grows with each rebirth, but it is powerless against them. It longs for revenge, and yet it continues to die by their hands. In one of its most recent lives, the creature is reborn as an elephant. It lives its life, but eventually humans bring about its death once again. It feels the unbearable pain of reincarnation as it dies. It has suffered through many painful deaths before, but this one is unlike anything it has ever known. Its body feels as if it is being torn apart. But the greater the pain, the stronger the creature it will become in its next life. That is the rule it has learned after countless rebirths. As the pain reaches its peak, the creature wonders what it will be next. What form will it take? It has been many things before, but nothing could prepare it for what comes next. It opens its eyes. It is reborn once more. It is something unexpected this time. It has become the very thing it hates the most. It is reborn as a human. Lee Jane is the name his mother gave him. He has a name from birth for the first time in countless thousands of years. He thinks about how humans are different. Even though they belong to the same species, they still divide themselves. They separate based on nationality, race, and many other things. Humans give names to everything in the world and attach meaning to them. When Jane was born, he did not cry. Every time his mother tried to speak to him, he only reacted but never spoke a word. Worried about her son, she took him to the doctor for a checkup. But the results were not what she expected. Jane was completely healthy. The doctor could not find anything wrong with him. But since Jane did not speak or show emotions, the doctor suggested that she take him to a psychologist. Jane's mother became angry hearing this. She accused the doctor of calling her son mentally ill. Jane was the most precious thing in her life, and she refused to believe there was anything wrong with him. His mother's name is Youngshil. From Jane's perspective, she is ignorant and stubborn. She is also uneducated and has lived a very unfortunate life. When she was young, she lost her family to war. Later, she lost her husband to war as well. The world is cruel and full of suffering to Youngshil. But despite all the hardship, she still has a child to care for. She does everything she can to raise Jane properly. She often carries him on her back while selling vegetables at the market. She once heard that telling good things to a baby would help them grow into a kind person. Even though Jane never responds, Youngshil always smiles and tells him that she loves him. Jane does not understand the meaning of these words. However, he can feel something warm in them. Jane has lived many lives and has always hated humans. But after spending so much time with Youngshil, he realizes something strange. He does not despise her. He still does not fully understand her love, but her actions make him feel something different. Something he has never felt before. He wonders if this life will be different from the others. Far from Jane's home, something unexpected happens one night. A group of people is chasing a criminal when they suddenly notice Jane. He is standing on top of a tall pole. They are confused. How could a little child climb so high? But what happens next surprises them even more. Jane is testing his abilities, and the timing is perfect. He decides to use them against the criminals. These people are villains in his mind, so he does not hesitate. He thinks of frogs, and in an instant, he gains their abilities. He leaps down from the pole without fear, which shocks everyone. He does not speak a single word. Moving with the speed of a cheetah and the strength of a dinosaur, he takes down one of the criminals in the blink of an eye. At that moment, he realizes something important. In this life, he is different. He has been reborn with the strengths of all the creatures he has ever lived as. He does not know why he has this power, but he does know one thing for certain. This will be his final life. And knowing that brings him peace, because at last he will finally be able to die. The onlookers are in shock. Seeing a child kill someone with a single punch is beyond belief. It is something that should not be possible. Unable to stay calm, a detective reacts immediately. He attacks Jane without hesitation. Jane sees the punch coming, but he does not dodge. Instead, he lets it hit him. The force of the punch is strong and Jane is knocked to the ground. Pain spreads through his body. But instead of being upset, he is curious. This pain teaches him something new about himself. He realizes that if he does not focus on using his abilities, he is just like any other human. He has no special powers without concentration. Now aware of this, Jane prepares himself. He knows that the detective will attack again. He decides to use his strength this time. He focuses and calls upon the toughness of a turtle. The detective throws another punch, but it has no effect this time. Jane does not even flinch. The detective looks confused, but before he can react, Jane fights back. With the strength of a chimpanzee, Jane grabs the detective's arm and twists it. The detective's hand is dislocated instantly. Jane does not stop there. With overwhelming power, he grabs the detective by the neck. If he squeezes any harder, the detective will die. But before Jane can do anything more, something unexpected happens. A gunshot echoes in the air. Jane feels a sharp pain in his body. He looks down and sees blood. A bullet has pierced him. He had no time to react, no way to defend himself. His vision darkens. His body feels weak. Before he knows it, he collapses. The criminal panics, believing he has just killed someone. Without looking back, he runs away in fear. The detectives stand frozen. They do not know what to do. In the end, they leave Jane behind and disappear into the night. As dawn approaches, Jane lies motionless on the ground. There is no one around him. His wound is deep. A bullet has pierced his organs. He might not survive. He might die here. But something strange happens. Jane's body begins to heal itself. His wounds close up on their own. His body regenerates completely. It is the instinct of a jellyfish. Jellyfish is a creature that can recover from injuries miraculously. Jane is alive. However, he does not feel happy about it. Jane gets up slowly. His power is beyond anything he could have imagined. He is still a child, yet he is stronger than any normal human. But at the same time, he feels empty. His existence itself does not make sense. As he looks into the distance, he hears a voice calling his name. It is his mother. Youngshil is searching for him and she sounds worried. Jane hears her, but he does not move. He feels nothing towards his mother's worries. He wonders if he should leave her. He is no longer just a human child. He is capable of surviving on his own. He could disappear and live by himself. But then, memories come rushing back. He remembers his mother's gentle hands. He remembers her warm smile. He remembers how she always told him that she loves him. He remembers her tears when she could not find him. Suddenly, he feels something new. He cannot bear to leave her. 4 days pass since Jane was shot, and since then he is wandering in the forest. He feels weaker than ever. His body collapses to the ground. He wonders what is happening. He wonders if it was due to something he ate. He thought humans could eat anything. He remembers eating birds, snakes, and rabbits. But now he feels like he is dying. He does not mind. He has no regrets. If this is the end, then so be it. At that moment he hears footsteps. Someone is running toward him. It is his mother. Youngshil sees him lying on the ground and rushes over. She holds him tightly in her arms. She cries as she embraces him. Her warmth surrounds him completely. For the first time since his birth, Jane feels something deep in his heart. It is a feeling he has never known before. A feeling that is warm and comforting. Without thinking, he speaks, telling his mother he loves him. They are the same words she has always told him. The words she said to him every day with a smile. Youngshil bursts into tears hearing them from Jane. She holds him even tighter and cries for a long time. As the sun set, the sky was more beautiful than ever before that evening. Jane thinks to himself that he should stay like this for a little longer. He will stay by his mother's side just until he can survive on his own. He will take his time to learn how humans live. The scene shifts to the police station. The criminal who shot Jane has been captured. Desperate to save himself, he tries to tell the police about Jane. He claims that he saw a child with inhuman strength, and that he even shot and killed him. However, things do not go as he planned. One of the detectives betrays the criminal. He is the same detective who fought Jane. Instead of listening, he dismisses the criminal's words as nonsense. He convinces the others that the criminal is just making up wild stories to escape punishment. No one believes him. As a result, the information about Jane's abilities remains a secret. Meanwhile, Jane's life continues as usual. After that night, his mother holds his hand tightly every time he goes outside. He can feel the warmth of her touch. Every time she smiles at him, he feels something strange in his heart. It is a warmth he has never known before. Youngshil does everything she can to protect him. When bullies try to bother Jane, she threatens to beat them up. When neighbors gossip about him, she confronts them without fear. When someone tries to take her selling spot at the market, she does not hesitate to argue or protest. No matter what happens, she always fights for her son. Jane watches her closely. He sees how much she struggles. He sees how she never backs down. Day after day, she stands against the world for him. With the passage of time, Jane slowly gets used to human life. His body adapts, and he begins to understand more about the way humans live. He starts to feel like he belongs. He asks his mother one day about the reason she fights every day. Young Shil looks at him and simply says that she fights to protect him. Jane realizes something painful. He has to leave, but he does not want to. He wants to stay by Young Shil's side forever. But he knows the truth. He is no ordinary human. His existence is too different. Staying with his mother might put her in danger. She could suffer because of him if anyone were to find out what he truly is. The worst possible thing happens. The only person who knows Jane's secret returns. The detective who fought him years ago has not forgotten. He has waited all this time, hoping to meet Jane again. Jane believes in the survival of the fittest. The weak always fall prey to the strong. No creature is free from this rule, and no life is exempt from this endless cycle. He understands this as the natural order of life. However, there are some deaths he cannot accept. Some creatures are killed just so humans can keep warm in winter or cool in summer. Some are killed to create new inventions. Others die so humans can carry their money in bags made from another creature's skin. Some are killed just to be displayed as trophies, and some are killed purely for entertainment. 12 years have passed since Jane began his new life. He has learned how to live among humans. Over the years, his neighborhood changes quickly. The streets are rebuilt, buildings grow taller, and factories rise along the river near his home. But not all changes are good. Young Shil has fallen ill. Jane steps into their home and sees her lying weakly on the bed. He remembers a time when she ate fish while he refused to touch it. That was the moment he should have stopped her. He should have warned her, but he didn't. Now he takes care of her while she fights her illness. As he is about to leave the house one day, Young Shil asks in a weak voice if he is going to school. Jane lies and says yes, but in reality, he is going to the market to sell apples. Sitting at his stall, he watches the city around him. Humans have destroyed the land for the sake of convenience, and yet, their own progress turns against them. Jane wonders why his mother has to suffer because of it. The real tragedy begins when Jane encounters someone he never expects to see again. A man approaches his stall and asks for the price of apples. He smiles and comments that they look delicious. Jane recognizes him immediately. It is the detective. Jane knows that every human is different, but humans have created laws to suppress their differences and maintain order in society. In the past, Jane broke the one law that must never be broken. He killed a human. The detective has been watching him. He planned to visit earlier but chose to wait. He wanted to observe Jane first. He wanted to see how monsters grow up. And now he wonders why Jane is pretending to be human. Jane stays silent. The detective expects this. Then everything descends into chaos. The detective suddenly accuses Jane of being a spy and arrests him. Jane closes his eyes and allows them to put handcuffs on him. Even though he does not resist, the detective pushes him into a corner. He tells Jane that if he is a spy, then his mother might be one too. He smirks and says that he has already sent people to investigate her. Since she is weak and sick, he wonders if she will survive the rough interrogation. Hearing this, Jane loses control. The only reason he continues living as a human is because of his mother. She is the one thing keeping him tethered to this life. The moment she is in danger, nothing else matters. In front of the shocked crowd, Jane easily breaks free from the handcuffs and dashes away at full speed. He must protect his mother. This is exactly what the detective wants. The other officers are horrified by what they just witnessed. The detective turns to them and asks if they can now see the truth. Jane is a monster. He falsely accused a 12-year-old boy of being a spy just to serve his own purpose. He forced Jane to expose his true nature. And now he is thrilled. His hunt can finally begin. But he has made a terrible mistake. He still sees Jane as just a monster, something dangerous but still within his control. What he does not realize is that he is facing a creature far beyond human understanding. He is standing against an all-powerful being, one capable of erasing humanity from existence. Jane rushes back home from the market, determined to reach his mother before the detectives do. But he is too late. As soon as he arrives, Young Shil opens the door and sees a group of strangers surrounding her son, ready to take him away. Even though she is weak from illness, she does not hesitate to fight for him. She screams for the neighbors, begging them to help protect Jane. But the detective has already convinced his colleagues that Young Shil is a spy. Because of this false belief, they show no mercy. Young Shil refuses to let them take Jane without a fight. She struggles fiercely, trying to resist them, but they strike her down. She collapses to the ground, helpless and in pain. Jane feels a chill run through his entire body. Anger burns inside him, spreading from his head to his toes. The thin thread holding his sanity together snaps. Overwhelming rage takes control of him. In just a few breaths, Jane moves with a speed and strength no human can match. The unfortunate detectives never stand a chance. One by one, they fall at the hands of a 12-year-old boy. Their lives end before they even understand what has happened. Jane stands in the middle of the chaos, his hands stained with blood. His heart pounds as he turns toward his mother. Fear grips him. He is terrified that young Shil will look at him the same way everyone else does. He is afraid she will see him as a monster. But he has done what he had to do. He has protected her, even if it means doing something unforgivable. The detective arrives and takes in the horrifying scene before him. His men lie lifeless on the ground. He turns to the remaining officers and reminds them of what he has said before. Jane is a monster. He warns them not to let their guard down just because he is young. If they do, they will end up like the corpses at their feet. Young Shil, despite being weak and barely able to stand, steps forward to protect Jane. She claims responsibility for everything. She tells them that she has killed the detectives herself. She says this even though she barely has the strength to feed herself. The unconditional love she shows for him pierces Jane's heart in a way he has never felt before. The pain is unbearable. Jane cries for the first time in his long existence. Tears stream down his face as he struggles to understand why his mother has sacrificed so much just to protect him. He torments himself with questions, unable to comprehend the depth of her love. His heart is heavy with emotions he has never felt before. The human before him, young Shil, is now the most precious thing in his lonely and endless life. But despite everything, her life is now in grave danger. The twisted detective is consumed by his own beliefs, and he gives a cruel order. He commands his men to aim their weapons at Jane's mother. Jane cannot allow that to happen. Without hesitation, he steps in front of young Shil to shield her from harm. He knows he is not like ordinary humans. He has extraordinary strength, and he will use every bit of it to protect her. As the bullets come flying toward them, Jane uses the abilities of an armadillo. His body becomes an impenetrable shield, effortlessly blocking every shot. The detectives are left in shock, unable to believe what they are witnessing. But their fear only makes them more reckless. In a frenzy, they continue firing, determined to take both mother and son down. Jane stands his ground, enduring the endless attacks. His body is covered in bruises and blood, but he does not fall. He refuses to let them harm young Shil. However, as she watches him suffer, she cannot bear it any longer. Her heart aches at the sight of her son pushing himself beyond his limits just to protect her. She knows that for someone like her, death is inevitable in this situation. There is no way she can survive. She makes her final decision. With the last of her strength, young Shil sacrifices herself for Jane. She steps forward and shields him, taking the fatal shots meant for him. Her body trembles as she collapses beside her son. The life slowly fades from her eyes, but in that moment, Jane's extraordinary power allows him to briefly connect with her. In those last seconds, she comforts him. Jane, overwhelmed with grief, tells her there is no reason for him to live anymore. He has spent countless lifetimes wanting to die, and now more than ever he wishes for it. He wants to follow her, to be reunited with her as soon as possible. But with her final breath, young Shil makes him promise something. No matter what happens, no matter what he does, he has to live. That is her last wish. After his mother's death, Jane believes there is no way he can live alongside humans. His existence only brings chaos to their world. He sees only two options ahead. Either he will be killed, or he will have to kill humans to survive. But he cannot forget his mother's last wish. To honor it, he makes a decision. He will erase human existence from the earth, ensuring that no one else will suffer as he has. However, he does not want his mother's spirit to witness the destruction he is about to bring. To keep her memory away from the bloodshed, he flees, leading the detectives away from their home. Jane lures them to a flower field, a place filled with memories of peace and warmth where he once felt safe with his mother. Standing in the field, he reflects on his existence. He realizes he is something unnatural, something deeply flawed. But as he looks back at the world around him, he sees that humans are no different. They have devastated nature, destroyed lands, and taken lives without remorse. He finally understands the reason behind his powers. Perhaps this planet has given him this strength as a way to push humanity to the edge of extinction. That is the only explanation that makes sense. After leading the detectives far from his home, Jane strikes without hesitation. He unleashes his overwhelming power against those responsible for taking away the one person who mattered most to him. Within moments, the corrupt detectives fall one by one. They never stand a chance. With a single leap, Jane charges at them, his abilities far beyond anything they can handle. Their cries of fear and pain echo through the air, but Jane feels nothing. He has no sympathy for them. In the end, only one man remains, the detective who orchestrated it all. He is barely alive, his body broken and weak, but his hatred still burns. He curses Jane, calling him a monster. Jane only smirks at his words. To him, the detective has failed. He has failed to kill Jane, and because of that, the entire human race will now face his wrath. There will be no mercy. With that final thought, Jane swiftly ends the detective's life. With his vengeance complete, he turns away from the battlefield and returns to his mother's side. He picks up her lifeless body and holds her close. He does not stop or look back. As he walks, memories of his time with her flood his mind. He can hear her gentle voice, feel the warmth of her love, and recall the peaceful life he once knew. But that life is gone. All that remains now is his endless journey forward, carrying the only person who has ever truly loved him. Jane's years with his mother were brief compared to the millions of years he had lived, but for him those short years meant everything. In that fleeting time, he experienced endless love and joy, something he had never known before. His mother had given him warmth, care, and affection unlike anything he had ever felt. But now she was gone, and it was because of him. There was no life left in her, and the weight of that reality crushed him. The pain of her death is unbearable. Jane feels an emptiness inside him that no power can fill. Despite this, he knows he has to keep going. His mother's final wish was for him to continue living no matter what happened. It is a path she has entrusted to him, and he will honor it. With that thought in mind, he wanders aimlessly, carrying his grief with him. Eventually, he arrives at a strange and unfamiliar place. While walking through the wilderness, he encounters a hunter. The hunter raises his weapon and shoots a bird, killing it instantly. Jane's first instinct is to kill the man's anger rising in him at the sight of another life being taken so easily. But before he can act, the hunter notices him. Instead of being afraid, the man looks at him with curiosity. The hunter asks Jane about his parents. At that moment, Jane hesitates. When he mentions that his mother has passed away, something in the hunter's expression changes. The old man looks at him with concern rather than suspicion. Without asking any more questions, he takes off his coat and places it around Jane's shoulders to keep him warm. Then, without hesitation, he takes Jane with him. The hunter leads Jane to his home, where an elderly woman is waiting for her son's return. She welcomes Jane with kindness, treating him with the same warmth she shows her own family. The way they speak to him, the way they care for him, is something he has not expected. For the first time since his mother's death, Jane feels a small spark of trust toward humans. He has believed that people are cruel and selfish, yet these two strangers have shown him kindness when they have no reason to. However, life in the mountains is difficult. The elderly couple barely have enough for themselves, let alone another child to care for. Though they want to help, they know they cannot provide Jane with what he needs. The next morning, the old man makes a decision. He takes Jane into town, hoping to find a better place for him. There, Jane can have proper care, go to school, and learn how to speak politely. Though Jane does not know what awaits him, he follows the hunter, unsure if this new path will lead to the life his mother has wished for him. As Jane and the hunter walk toward the new house, Jane becomes curious about the hunter's mother. He wonders why she cannot hear or speak, yet the hunter still talks to her every day. The hunter explains that even though his mother cannot hear his words, she understands everything he wants to say. It is the deep connection of a mother's love, something that does not need words to be understood. Hearing this makes Jane feel a little better. His mood lightens as he thinks about the love between a parent and a child. It reminds him of Youngshil, of how she always knew what he needed without him saying a word. For a brief moment, he feels warmth again. But that happiness does not last long. As they continue walking, a sudden and heavy rainstorm hits. The rain pours down in thick sheets, making it hard to see. The two have no choice but to find shelter. However, disaster strikes almost immediately. In recent years, greedy businesses have cut down all the trees in the area, leaving the land unstable. With nothing to hold the soil together, the heavy rain triggers a landslide. The earth beneath them shifts violently, and rocks tumble down the slope with terrifying speed. The hunter is caught in the disaster. Jane watches in horror as the man is buried beneath layers of dirt and stone. No matter how strong Jane is, he cannot stop the force of nature. Once again, he finds himself helpless, watching someone he cares for die before his eyes. The pain in his heart grows heavier. But even in his sorrow, he does not forget the hunter's last wish. Jane carefully carries the hunter's lifeless body back home. The elderly mother, who has been waiting for her son's return, sees him instead lying still in Jane's arms. The shock is too much for her weak body to handle. Unable to bear the grief of losing her child, she passes away shortly after. Jane is left standing there alone once again. In his heart, he feels lost. He struggles between two choices. Should he destroy humanity, knowing they are the cause of so much pain and suffering? Or should he try to live among them as his mother wanted? He does not know the right answer, and the fear of making the wrong choice weighs on him. But then he remembers Youngshil's words. She has once told him that even if he does not know what to do, he should still try. If he feels lost, he should follow what he believes is right. She has told him that making mistakes is part of life. Remembering this gives Jane a sense of clarity. He cannot ignore the truth. The hunter and his mother have died because of the greed of powerful businesses. They have destroyed the land, cutting down trees without care, leaving it vulnerable to disasters. Their selfish actions have cost 2 innocent lives. Jane cannot let that go unpunished. Determined, he sets out on his own. He finds the people responsible for the destruction. With his overwhelming power, he strikes down the greedy businessmen one by one. At that moment, there is only one thing he wants to do, and he does not hesitate. Destroying humanity is not an easy task, but Jane still believes he can do it. With that thought in mind, he visits the graves of the hunter and his mother one last time before setting out on his journey. He needs to become stronger. Although he has the power of all creatures, he is still just like an ordinary human when he is not actively thinking about his abilities. He realizes that if he wants to accomplish his goal, he has to train himself so that his powers will work without conscious effort. Years pass and Jane dedicates himself to his training. After the first 5 years, he reaches a point where he can maintain his abilities subconsciously. A clear sign of his progress is when a speeding train hits him, yet he remains completely unshaken. His body develops an incredible level of durability, almost like an indestructible shell. In the following year, Jane discovers a new ability. He can communicate with all living creatures through telepathy. At first, he is excited by this newfound power, but what he learns troubles him. Most animals and living beings on Earth do not hate humans as he does. Many creatures admire humans or simply coexist with them. This realization unsettles him, making him question his own beliefs. Despite this, Jane continues to train. 5 more years pass, then 10. By then, he has grown into a fully mature human body with unmatched strength. His reflexes are so advanced that he can react to any external attack or force without even thinking. His instincts have been sharpened to perfection. As his abilities grow stronger, something even more astonishing happens. He realizes he can communicate not just with animals but also with the earth itself. He can hear the whispers of the water, the voices of the trees, and even the silent cries of the land beneath him. He is no longer just connected to living beings. He is connected to the very essence of the world. The earth is suffering. The water, the forests, and the land are all in pain, slowly dying due to the reckless destruction caused by humans. Jane can feel their agony as if it is his own. This connection deepens his hatred for humanity. 30 more years pass and Jane's training has no limits. His abilities become so advanced that there is nothing he cannot do. He can combine different powers effortlessly, creating effects that seem impossible. He has become a force beyond human comprehension, capable of shaping the world itself. Now Jane has the power to destroy all humans whenever he wants. By transferring heat deep into the ground, applying pressure, and repeating the process multiple times, he can create a massive earthquake that will split the earth apart. With his current strength, he can generate an earthquake so intense that all 6 continents will be affected. The land will crack and break apart, dividing into smaller pieces, and nearly half of the continents will sink into the ocean. If that happens, Jane believes no human will be left alive after such a catastrophe. Jane plans to unleash this destruction, but he hesitates. He remembers not only the cruel and selfish humans, but also those like his mother and the kind hunter. People like them make him reluctant to carry out his plan. He has been alone for 47 years, filled with anger and sorrow, yet something inside him tells him not to rush. He has the power to do anything, so there is no need to act immediately. For now, he decides to observe humans a little longer before making his final decision. As he wanders through the world, he sees endless signs of human destruction. Everywhere he goes, nature is being torn apart. One day, he comes across a beautiful forest covered in flowers, but humans have begun clearing it to make roads for their vehicles. Seeing this, Jane is filled with rage. Without hesitation, he uses his power to turn the road into a chaotic mess, destroying everything in an instant. He does not care about the consequences. At first, Jane ignores the humans on the road. He is only focused on destruction. But then his eyes fall upon one of the drivers. Her face looks so much like his late mother's that he freezes in shock. Without thinking, he rushes to save her. However, at that exact moment, a large rock from above comes loose and falls toward him. Jane should have been able to defend himself, but something is wrong. His powers fail to activate. For the first time, he feels completely vulnerable. As he falls, he is confused. Why can't he use his abilities? What has happened to him? The moment he sees the stranger's face, something inside him shifts. He loses control. His mind goes blank, and in that instant, the falling rock strikes his head. The impact is devastating. Jane has never thought it is possible, but this single moment of weakness nearly costs him his life. Everything fades to darkness. He truly believes he is going to die. However, when he finally regains consciousness, he is no longer the same. He has survived after undergoing a complex head surgery. But something is missing. His memories. Most of his past is gone, leaving only vague fragments. He cannot remember his purpose, his rage, or his pain. The only thing he remembers clearly is his name, Jane. Jane cannot provide any information about himself, and no investigation gives any answers. Even his fingerprints are not registered anywhere. With no other choice, the police suggest that Risu, the woman he saved, take him home as his guardian. She is reluctant at first, but eventually agrees. On the outside, Jane looks like a 24-year-old man, while Risu is 34 years old. As they speak, Risu asks him to speak more politely. Even though Jane's real age is around 30 billion years, he does not argue. Something about Risu reminds him of a motherly presence, and without thinking, he often reaches out for her hand while they search for work and a place to stay. At first, Risu is hesitant, unsure of how to react. But she cannot bring herself to refuse a young man who once risked his life to save hers. She lets him hold her hand, and to her surprise, Jane suddenly bursts into tears. He does not understand why, but something about that simple gesture overwhelms him with emotion. Later, Risu introduces Jane to a friend who owns a restaurant, hoping to get him a job as a server. At first, her friend is unsure if Jane is suitable for the job. His way of speaking is strange, as if he is mimicking a regional dialect rather than naturally speaking. It makes him stand out, and they worry that customers might find it odd. However, Risu is determined to help Jane find a stable place in the world, and so she convinces her friend to give him a chance. Although Jane struggles at first, he works hard to adapt. The warmth and kindness he receives from Risu makes him feel something unfamiliar yet comforting, as if he is beginning to understand the human world in a way he never has before. Risu's friend eventually decides to hire Jane, giving him a chance to work at the cafe. Although Jane still wishes to live with Risu, he understands that he has to accept his new life at the cafe. He works hard, slowly adjusting to his new environment. Meanwhile, Risu is busy with her environmental research. She has many responsibilities and often has to leave on short trips. Because of this, she plans to leave her dog behind while she is away. However, she is surprised to see how attached her dog becomes to Jane. The animal shows him great affection, following him everywhere and refusing to leave his side. What shocks Risu even more is what happens when Jane touches the dog. The moment his hand makes contact, he feels something strange. A mysterious energy flows into him, and suddenly he realizes he has gained a new ability. This newfound power enhances his senses, allowing him to perceive things he has never noticed before. Using this heightened awareness, Jane senses something unusual. Deep within Risu's environmental research facility, there is an unknown presence. Something mysterious and powerful. It is a creature he has never encountered before, and its emotions are overwhelming. The strongest feeling it emits is pure hatred toward humans. Jane has no idea what this creature is, but he can tell that it is dangerous. Curious and slightly uneasy, Jane wonders what secrets are hidden within Risu's research. Something about this creature feels different, and he cannot shake the feeling that it will soon change everything. At Risu's workplace, researchers study Hydra organisms. These tiny creatures have an incredible ability to regenerate their entire bodies from small pieces, similar to how cancer cells grow uncontrollably. The scientists try to develop a special protein that can stop this regeneration process, hoping to use it as a cure for cancer. The Earth is designed to function in balance. From the smallest plankton to the largest animals, every living being has a role in maintaining harmony. Instincts guide all creatures from birth, ensuring their survival. A newborn baby knows how to drink milk from its mother, and a baby bird instinctively breaks out of its shell. These natural actions are not learned through experience, but are built into life itself. All creatures on Earth are connected through the cycle of life and death. This cycle keeps the planet stable. Take plankton, for example, one of the smallest organisms on Earth. Plankton are a vital food source for many animals and play a major role in cloud formation. When water evaporates from the ocean, tiny particles from plankton help the water droplets form clouds. These clouds reflect sunlight away from the planet, preventing the Earth from becoming too hot. In this way, the ocean produces half of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. It regulates the climate and provides life to all living creatures. The ocean is like a massive life support system. However, humans are slowly destroying it with pollution and reckless activities, threatening the balance of nature. Recently, the research facility discovers a new species of Hydra, which they name Steer. This creature has the same regenerative ability as other Hydra, but it is unlike anything they have seen before. The scientists treat it like any other test subject, unaware of its true nature. However, Steer has a powerful survival instinct, and that instinct poses a threat to humanity. Right now, there are two unique beings on Earth with the potential to change everything. One of them is Steer, trapped inside a laboratory. The other is Jane, a being who has forgotten his past. Neither humans nor the researchers have any idea that these two forces are about to collide. Jane is slowly adjusting to life at the cafe. Since he is still learning how to interact with people, the cafe owner suggests that he read some of the books available there. Most customers rarely touch them, so Jane has plenty of time to read. Under the owner's guidance, he quickly picks up the skills needed to serve customers. Thanks to his good looks, Jane attracts many people to the cafe. More and more customers start visiting, which causes the cafe's revenue to rise sharply. Risu's friend, who owns the place, is very pleased with his performance. To celebrate how well Jane has adjusted to his new job, Risu invites him and her friend out for drinks. At first, Jane does not like the bitter taste of beer, but when he learns that people drink to get drunk and reveal their true selves, he becomes curious. Eventually, he ends up drinking too much and gets drunk himself. On the way home, he walks alongside Risu, his mind hazy from the alcohol. Influenced by the books he has read, he subtly hints at wanting to ensure her safety. Risu does not fully understand what he means, but she accepts his words without thinking too much about them. As they continue walking, they notice fireflies glowing in the dark. It is the first time Risu has ever seen them, and she is fascinated by their soft, flickering lights. Jane, still drunk, unconsciously activates his instincts. Without realizing it, his body starts to glow just like the fireflies. However, this unexpected sight frightens Risu. Seeing Jane's body emitting light is unnatural, and for the first time she feels uneasy around him. Risu panics and runs away without noticing that there is no path ahead. She loses her footing and falls into a ravine. Fortunately, Jane reacts with the speed of a predator and quickly rescues her before she can hit the ground. The next morning, Risu returns to work at the research facility. There she is introduced to a creature called Steer. The facility currently has 14 steer specimens, but 13 of them have been separated from a single mother organism. During an experiment, the team leader pours acid onto the mother specimen. Surprisingly, the acid has no effect on it. However, even though the other 13 specimens are not directly touched, they all react at the same time. This strange occurrence leaves the researchers puzzled. They cannot determine whether the 14 specimens are separate individuals or if they share some unknown connection. To this day, no one has been able to explain it. Later that morning, Risu takes the opportunity to ask the team leader about Jane's case. His response sends shivers down her spine. He firmly believes that if someone like Jane truly exists, that being would not be considered human. Instead, he would be treated as nothing more than a research subject to advance scientific knowledge. Shaken by this conversation, Risu rushes to confront Jane after her shift. She wants to know the truth about his abilities. Jane does not hesitate to answer. He is sincere in admitting that he can become anything he wants. However, he promises that he will not do anything if Risu dislikes it. At that moment, Risu asks him another question. If he can become anything, what does he plan to do with the memories he still has? Without thinking, Jane responds instinctively. He says that he will wipe out humanity. Risu is left speechless, completely overwhelmed by his words. Despite Risu's unexpected reaction, John cannot even recall what he has just said a few seconds ago. This leaves Risu feeling extremely confused. She cannot understand the true nature of the person standing in front of her. Determined to find answers, she hands Jane a contract. From that moment on, he will become her research subject. Jane is not forced to sign it, but he agrees without hesitation. This marks the beginning of a long and exhausting night for him. During Risu's experiments, he endures various tests and procedures which leave him completely drained. The next morning, Jane struggles to keep up with his usual duties at the cafe. His exhaustion is evident when he meets the cafe owner, who notices his tired expression. Meanwhile, Risu is busy analyzing the biological data she has collected from him. After running multiple tests, her colleagues conclude that Jane is just an ordinary young man. Their analysis shows nothing unusual about his body or DNA. However, Risu cannot accept this result. She has witnessed things about Jane that defy human understanding. Revisiting all the strange incidents involving him, she is certain that he is not a normal human being. Unlike her colleagues, she refuses to see him as just another test subject bound by human logic. Still struggling to understand his true nature, Risu walks past the laboratory containing the steer specimens while carrying a vial of Jane's blood. The moment she passes by, something unexpected happens. The original steer specimen, which has always remained calm, suddenly becomes violent. It reacts aggressively, thrashing against its containment, as if it senses something from Jane's blood. The other steer specimens also become restless, reacting to the disturbance. Before anyone can comprehend what is happening, the main specimen manages to break free from its containment. The lab is immediately thrown into chaos as alarms blare throughout the facility. At that exact moment, Jane, who is still at the cafe, senses the danger. His instincts scream at him, warning him of the impending threat. Without knowing why, he feels an undeniable connection to whatever has just escaped. The research staff quickly move into action as the containment unit breaks apart. Steer, the strange specimen, is now free and lying on the floor. The team leader, who is closest to Steer, reaches out, but before he can react, Steer bites him. Moments later, something unexpected happens. Steer suddenly dies for no apparent reason. Even though the mother specimen is dead, the other steer specimens remain completely unaffected. However, the team leader who has been bitten starts convulsing violently. His body shakes uncontrollably before he collapses unconscious. Hearing the commotion, Risu rushes into the room, still holding the blood vial she has collected from Jane. As soon as she steps inside, the team leader's body moves unnaturally, as if something else is controlling him. Without warning, he lunges at her in a sudden attack. Fortunately, Jane arrives just in time. Without hesitation, he knocks the team leader unconscious before he can harm Risu. Wasting no time, Jane swiftly carries the unconscious man and rushes him to the hospital for emergency treatment. Later, when Risu asks Jane how he knew where she was, he struggles to explain. He has no clear answer. He only knows that something inside him told him she was in danger. One thing is certain: her workplace is far more dangerous than she realizes. Meanwhile, the team leader remains unconscious in the hospital, but his body shows signs of something unnatural. It seems that he is still being controlled by Steer even though the mother specimen is dead. To make matters worse, another coworker who has only suffered a small scratch from the team leader also begins showing similar symptoms. Jane, now fully aware of the growing danger, urges Risu to stay away from her workplace. He knows that whatever is happening inside that lab is beyond human understanding, and it is no longer safe for her to be there. Jane takes Risu's hand and leads her away. He cannot clearly explain why her workplace is dangerous, but Risu decides to trust him. She agrees to resign not because she fully believes his words, but because of the biological test results she has previously analyzed. Although Jane appears human, his senses are much sharper than normal. That is reason enough for her to follow his instincts. There is another thing she notices. Besides caring for her, Jane seems to have a deep dislike for other people. She does not understand why, but it makes her even more curious about him. She decides to spend more time observing him and figuring out what is hidden beneath his cold attitude. Meanwhile, the head of the research team is struggling with his own situation. His consciousness fades in and out unpredictably. Sometimes he feels like himself, and other times something else seems to take over. According to the doctors, there is nothing physically wrong with him, but when he is fully aware, he knows something unnatural is happening. The only possible explanation is Steer. Determined to uncover the truth, he makes up his mind to return to the lab. Inside the laboratory, another researcher who has been injured earlier is unaware of a small but alarming event. He has just been bitten by a mosquito. It is a tiny moment, yet it could mean something much worse. If Steer's influence can spread, this could be a terrible sign of what is coming for humanity. Back with Jane and Risu, she confronts him about his views. She tells him that with the way he speaks and acts, he could very well cause humanity's extinction. She is certain that before losing his memory, Jane has encountered something that shaped his hatred for humans. However, she does not care much about that. She too dislikes humans in many ways. What truly makes her curious is why Jane treats her differently. He is cold to almost everyone, yet he shows special affection toward her. When she asks him about it, he cannot give her a clear answer. The only thing he knows for sure is that he likes being around Risu. Jane decides to show Risu his abilities right away. She is shocked to see that all the marine creatures move according to his will. But it is not just the living organisms. He can control the entire ocean itself. Jane suddenly asks her if she wants to ride. Risu is confused about what he means, but before she can ask, he grabs her arm. The water beneath them rises, lifting them into the air. They are riding on the ocean itself. At first, Risu is terrified, but Jane reassures her. He tells her that the earth and the wind are always by her side. If she can just feel them, nothing will be scary anymore. True to his words, once Risu lets go of her fear and embraces the experience, she feels something amazing. Instead of being afraid, she is thrilled by this new world Jane has shown her. Meanwhile, the head of the research team is still lying in bed. However, he is certain of one thing. Steer's main body is still inside him. It is using his nervous system to spread its influence, connecting with more and more people. He can feel the number growing rapidly, and it frightens him. Risu knows Jane is dangerous. She still does not know his past, but despite that, she sees him differently. As his guardian, she believes her purpose is to protect him, just like she wants to protect the earth from harm. When Jane hears her say this, he feels a deep happiness. He realizes that even if he gets his memories back, there is no longer a reason to destroy the world. If the person he loves wants to protect it, then so will he. But while Jane and Risu are finding peace, something much darker is happening elsewhere. The people Steer has infected are unknowingly acting as its hosts. They are sending signals back to the main body still inside the head researcher. And the message Steer receives is clear: the complete annihilation of humankind. To prevent human extinction, the head of the research team returns to the base and dismisses most of the staff. He also prohibits the remaining workers from entering his office. Inside his private room, he gathers all the information he has before he fully loses control to Steer. His records show that about 280,000 people are already connected to and controlled by Steer. Knowing his time is limited, he creates a folder to document everything before he completely loses himself. Soon after, his consciousness begins to break under the overwhelming influence of Steer. His thoughts turn darker, and he starts to see humanity as the enemy. It becomes impossible for him to tell whether he is controlling the infected or if they are controlling him. In his distorted mind, humans are now a disease that needs to be wiped out, and he believes he is the one chosen to create a new world. At the same time, the United States introduces a new environmental policy known as the Green Accord, designed to protect nature and in turn humanity itself. However, the head of the research team has already fallen too deep under Steer's influence. Instead of supporting the policy, he uses his ability to command the infected people to eliminate those who back it. With a simple order, he can make them obey his will, even forcing them to take their own lives. But his reign of terror does not last long. Jane quickly finds his location. The reason Jane discovers the threat is because of a mosquito acting strangely when it tries to bite Risu. His instincts immediately warn him of the danger he has been sensing for some time. He knows something is wrong. Initially, the head researcher still retains some of his own consciousness, but his mind has become twisted. However, as soon as Jane appears, Steer's main body completely takes over him, leaving no trace of his original self. Now the battle between the two most powerful creatures on the planet has officially begun. Previously, when Jane attacked, Steer remained silent, as it had not yet been strong enough. But now things are different. After failing to convince Jane to help exterminate humanity, Steer takes action. It commands the infected people to attack him. However, Steer has underestimated both Jane and the humans under its control. For Jane, their attacks are nothing more than child's play. With instincts sharpened over billions of years, he easily counters Steer's forces. Using only his physical strength, he strikes with overwhelming power, instantly teaching Steer a painful lesson. Jane quickly knocks Steer out and throws the human body it is controlling high into the sky. Then, like a toy, he tosses it down into a nearby deserted area. However, as long as Steer remains inside the research team leader's body, it cannot be killed. After that, Jane continues to land several powerful blows on Steer. But no matter how much damage he inflicts, the injuries heal almost instantly. Steer even attempts to invade Jane's cells, but it fails. It cannot understand how Jane's pure power is able to resist something that has the ability to control all living creatures. Realizing this, Steer changes its approach and commands the infected creatures in the area to attack Jane all at once. But the outcome does not change. With just a small force of energy, Jane makes the attacking creatures collapse before they can even reach him. Steer's body is sent flying into the sky again, and this time Jane delivers a powerful punch. The impact tears a massive hole into the side of the human body Steer is controlling. At this point, Steer finally realizes that a direct fight against the powerful being in front of it is impossible. However, that does not matter, because Steer now knows Jane's weakness. Steer has discovered Jane's fatal weakness, or at least the weakness of the version of Jane that lacks his full memories. Knowing exactly what to do next, Steer quickly summons a flock of crows. However, instead of attacking Jane, the birds fly past him and target Steer's own host. By doing this, Steer transfers its main body into one of the crows, leaving the head of the research team gasping for breath. With Steer's ability to regenerate finally exhausted, the weakened researcher tries to tell Jane about the important folder he has created. Unfortunately, Jane is not paying attention. His only concern at that moment is ensuring Risu's safety. Meanwhile, at the cafe, the owner Dawu suddenly loses control of herself. Without realizing it, she starts choking Risu. Although she briefly regains awareness and tells her to run, Risu hesitates, unable to understand what is happening. Outside the cafe, a crowd of controlled individuals has gathered. Their goal is to make Risu Steer's new host. Luckily, Jane arrives just in time and saves Risu once again. Even though he regrets it, he is forced to attack the cafe owner in order to protect her. At the same time, across the world, many people start experiencing strange neurological symptoms. The government classifies it as a possible infectious disease and launches an investigation to determine the cause. Those with mild symptoms report something even more alarming. They claim they are receiving strange words and images in their minds. The person they keep seeing in these images is a long-haired Korean woman. All of them have the same compulsion. They are being urged to bite or scratch that woman. Experts studying the new disease state that its first symptoms are mild muscle contractions starting from the arm and gradually spreading until the entire body moves involuntarily. They name this condition wave. In a small corner of the internet, a live streamer is broadcasting when his friend, who is among the first to be infected, appears on camera. At first, the streamer believes his friend is just acting for views, but to his shock, he realizes that his friend is truly being controlled by Steer. Along with many others who are also infected, his friend is heading directly toward Risu's location. Meanwhile, Jane and Risu find themselves surrounded by infected people approaching from all directions. Although Jane is incredibly powerful and cannot be defeated, he finds it difficult to protect his friend while dealing with the overwhelming number of controlled individuals. When he prepares to use force to defend himself, Risu stops him. Since he has no other choice, Jane carries Risu on his back and flees from the pursuing crowd. After escaping, Jane finally explains everything to Risu. He tells her that Steer has taken control of the head of the research team and is responsible for everything she has just witnessed. Additionally, to protect Risu, he has been forced to kill her boss, even though she does not want to be involved in such violence. However, Risu is horrified by how indifferent Jane seems after taking a life. She becomes furious, unable to understand how he can act so casually after killing a person. Her frustration leads her to reject Jane's help. She wants to investigate the situation on her own. But as an ordinary person with no special abilities, she is immediately in danger. The moment she approaches a door, Steer almost attacks her. Fortunately, Jane's instincts allow him to act in time. He quickly saves Risu from being harmed. No matter what Risu says, Jane does not care. To him, she is too important, and his only priority is keeping her safe. Using his electric eel ability, he creates a strong barrier at the door, completely blocking the infected people under Steer's control. However, this entire scene is unknowingly captured by a live streamer nearby. A massive number of viewers witness the extraordinary event, leaving many stunned by what they have just seen. Jane notices that even though the controlled people have no awareness, their bodies still move as if something is guiding them. His most urgent task now is to find out what is behind their movements. After carefully observing the situation, he discovers that Steer has disguised itself as a crow in the distance, and is using it to control the infected people. Without hesitation, Jane picks up a piece of debris from the ground and throws it forcefully toward the crow. The impact briefly disrupts Steer's connection with the infected individuals. However, due to its incredible ability to heal and recover, Steer quickly regains control, and once again the infected people begin to move under its command. Jane realizes there is no way to stop them without harming them, which puts him in a difficult position. He turns to Risu and pleads with her to let him stay by her side again. This time he promises he will not act recklessly. Seeing his sincerity, Risu agrees, allowing him to continue protecting her. Jane wastes no time. He picks her up and jumps from a great height, landing safely on the ground. This entire scene is captured on video, and soon it spreads everywhere. Meanwhile, at the Blue House, the president of South Korea is in an important meeting with his advisors. They update him on the wave crisis, explaining that they still have not identified patient 0 and need more time to investigate. The president, growing impatient, angrily demands results. Just then, one of his assistants hurries into the room carrying something important. The president, frustrated by the interruption, asks if it can wait. The assistant, looking serious, shakes his head and insists that it is urgent. He then plays a video on a large screen. The footage shows a man leaping through the air like a frog carrying a woman as he lands gracefully on the ground. The president frowns and asks if it is from a movie. The assistant shakes his head and explains that he too thought it was fake at first. However, after reviewing security footage and multiple sources, he confirms that it all happened in real time. Not only that, but the video is spreading across the entire nation with millions of people watching. In another part of the country, a high-ranking general also sees the footage. The moment she lays eyes on Jane, she immediately recognizes him. Her expression darkens, and without hesitation, she calls him a monster. Her father, a detective, had investigated Jane many years ago and died during the case. Seeing Jane again brings back painful memories and confirms her suspicions that he is no ordinary human. Back with Risu, the situation suddenly takes a tragic turn. Jane, who has been focused on external threats, fails to notice a crow sneaking up behind them. Before he can react, the bird attacks Risu, injuring her hand. When Jane finally turns around, he sees the dead crow lying on the ground and the wound on Risu's hand. For the first time, he realizes that he has failed to protect the person he values most. A wave of shock and regret washes over him as he stares at the injury. The sight of Risu hurt because of his failure leaves him speechless. After Steer accomplishes its goal, the people under its control suddenly regain consciousness. They are confused and disoriented, but none of them, including Risu, immediately realize the full extent of what has just happened. It is not until Jane points it out that Risu begins to understand the severity of the situation. Looking down at her arm, she finally notices the wound left by the crow. Jane's expression turns serious as he explains that she has been infected. His immediate solution is to suggest amputating her hand to stop the infection from spreading. The thought alone sends a wave of fear through Risu, and she quickly refuses. She cannot bring herself to accept such a drastic measure. Seeing her reaction, Jane falls silent, unsure of what to do next. Meanwhile, the government's investigation agency continues to dig deeper into the outbreak. Their findings lead them back to Risu's research facility where everything began. After thorough analysis, they confirm that Steer is the cause of the entire disaster. The turning point comes when the agency's leader accesses a folder left behind by the head of the research team. Inside, they find crucial information detailing Steer's evolution, complete with specific timelines and research notes. The documents reveal the terrifying truth. Steer has the ability to connect with and control all living creatures. However, the folder also contains something even more important: a potential way to defeat Steer. According to the research notes, the only way to stop Steer for good is to locate its true host body and destroy it. This discovery gives the agency a clear objective, marking a crucial step in their fight against the growing crisis. Back with Jane and Risu, tension fills the air. Jane is still deeply concerned about Risu's infection, but she is not ready to make any rash decisions. With a determined look in her eyes, she turns to Jane and questions him, asking what the point is in cutting off her arm. She is not willing to give up so easily. Jane and Risu have no idea that the government is after them. They return to the laboratory hoping to find a solution. However, as soon as they arrive, they are met by the state military who have been stationed outside the gates. Their images have already been reported to the Intelligence Bureau, and the order is given to arrest them immediately. Jane, furious at being treated like a criminal, is on the verge of attacking the soldiers. The military prepares to use force, ready to suppress him if necessary. The situation is about to spiral into chaos, but Risu quickly steps in to prevent a disaster. She convinces Jane to stand down and let them be taken in without a fight. Respecting her wishes, he reluctantly allows himself to be arrested, and both are taken away separately. Risu, suspected of being infected, is transferred to a government laboratory for testing. Meanwhile, Jane is handcuffed and taken to meet Kim Seon-young, the head of the Ministry of Defense. During their conversation, Seon-young brings up her father. a former detective who disappeared years ago while investigating a mysterious entity he believed to be a monster. However, Jane has no memory of this. He shows no interest in the story and repeatedly demands to know where Risu has been taken. Before Seonyoung can continue, a messenger enters the room with urgent news. Risu's test results have come back positive. Seonyoung turns to Jane and coldly informs him that they have found a solution to the virus by identifying and eliminating those who are infected. Jane immediately senses something is wrong. His anger explodes and he breaks free from his restraints. Furious, he demands to know what they have done to Risu. But Seonyoung remains calm, explaining that it is the only way to protect humanity. For Jane, however, the entire world boils down to just one person, Risu. Enraged, he punches the bulletproof glass separating them, ready to attack. But Seonyoung is not afraid. Instead, she reaches into her pocket and pulls out a photograph. It is an old picture of Jane and his mother. She points out that despite the years that have passed, he looks exactly the same as he does in the photo. As soon as he sees the image, something inside Jane shifts. Memories he has long forgotten come rushing back. He sees the moment he is born, the times he laughs with his mother, and the day he tells her that he loves her. Then the memories darken, showing him the pain, the suffering, and the tragic moments that follow. The overwhelming flood of emotions is too much. Jane, who has never shed a tear, suddenly finds himself crying uncontrollably. From this point on, humanity's arch-enemy has officially returned. On another front, Seonyoung submits an official request to the president outlining the threat posed by Steer. She emphasizes its rapid spread and the danger of its ability to control humans. To protect humanity, she proposes eliminating Risu, the current host of the virus. The president hesitates at first, struggling with the idea of taking an innocent life. However, when faced with the reality that sacrificing one person could save millions, he makes his decision. After much deliberation, he approves Seonyoung's request. Meanwhile, Risu remains unaware of the government's decision. She is in a precarious situation, completely oblivious to the fact that her life has just been marked for termination. Jane, on the other hand, has undergone a drastic transformation. With his memories fully restored, his entire attitude changes. The emotions he once suppressed come rushing back, and the pain of his mother's death resurfaces. Now, instead of focusing on saving Risu, he becomes consumed by a desire for revenge. To him, killing the detective responsible for his past suffering is nothing more than justice. When Seonyoung hears his words, she responds with sarcasm. She admits that she doesn't even remember her father's face anymore. To her, national security is more important than personal revenge. But Jane doesn't care about her opinions or her reasoning. He has only one goal at that moment: to get his hands on the photograph of his mother. Jane makes his intentions clear. He warns Seonyoung that if she hands over the photo willingly, he won't kill her. However, Seonyoung is stubborn and refuses to comply. Instead, she questions what he will do if she chooses not to cooperate. In response, Jane raises his hand and delivers a powerful punch. The force of the blow creates a hole in the wall, shattering through multiple walls beyond it. The entire building shakes from the impact. Seonyoung immediately realizes the danger she is in. Witnessing Jane's raw power firsthand, she knows that defying him could cost her life. Understanding that she has no choice, she reluctantly hands over the photograph. As Jane turns to leave, Seonyoung can't help but wonder if he is going to save Risu. However, his response is cold and emotionless. He states that it is just one more death added to the tally. The life of a single person means nothing to him anymore. His true goal has already been decided. He intends to wipe out humanity completely. Jane walks away without a care, leaving behind a scene of horror. The bodies of those he has killed lay scattered, and yet not a single person dares to step forward and stop him. Fear grips everyone who witnesses the massacre. Meanwhile, back in Seonyoung's office, the loud sounds of destruction draw the attention of her subordinates. They rush inside, expecting the worst, only to find Seonyoung unharmed but visibly shaken. The terrifying display of Jane's strength has left her trembling. Without hesitation, she orders her team to raise the national security alert to the highest level. Jane is no longer just a threat. He has become the greatest danger to the country. At the same time, Risu faces her impending execution. She is told that her infection makes her a danger to humanity, and that eliminating her is the only way to prevent further disaster. The weight of this realization hits her hard, but after much struggle, she reluctantly accepts her fate. Since she has agreed to cooperate, she is promised a painless death, one that will feel like falling into a peaceful sleep. However, deep inside, a part of her resists this fate. There is something inside her that does not agree with simply surrendering to death. Elsewhere, Dawoon has been searching for Jane, growing more and more worried. She hasn't been able to contact Risu all night, and that only makes her fear the worst. But just as she is about to ask Jane for help, a sudden and terrifying sight appears before her. Military forces surround them, armed with guns and even tanks aiming directly at them. At the same time, back in the research facility, Risu's body suddenly moves on its own. Steer, the parasite inside her, has taken control. With precise and calculated actions, it injects something into one of the researchers. The exact purpose is unknown, but it is clear that Steer is working to find a way to escape. When Risu regains consciousness, she is horrified by what she has done. However, despite her fear, she manages to stay composed, trying to make sense of the situation. While Risu struggles to understand what is happening to her, Dawoon faces her own crisis. What has started as a quiet moment is now a battlefield. Surrounded by military forces, Dawoon can do nothing but tremble in fear. She clings to her French lion, her mind racing as gunfire erupts around her. Jane stands nearby, watching everything unfold. His original goal has never changed. He still intends to wipe out humanity, yet seeing Dawoon in danger stirs something inside him. He remembers the joyful moments he has shared with her and, more importantly, with Risu. That feeling of nostalgia turns into regret, and for the first time in a long while, Jane hesitates. The hesitation, however, does not last long. When the military begins firing at him, Jane acts instantly. He steps in front of Dawoon, shielding her from the attacks. Despite the barrage of bullets and the powerful blasts from the tanks, Jane remains completely unscathed. Not a single scratch appears on his body. The soldiers, expecting to take him down instead, watch in horror as he stands there unharmed. Jane has no intention of letting his friend die. Even if his ultimate goal remains unchanged at this moment, he will do whatever it takes to protect Dawoon. Jane knows that Risu is nothing like his mother, yet he still feels the need to protect her. As the military scrambles in fear, he turns to Dawoon and asks if she wants to go with him to find Risu. Unlike Jane, who remains emotionless, Dawoon is overwhelmed by fear. She struggles to find an answer, her body shaking uncontrollably. Death is all around them, and she can barely process what is happening. Seeing her hesitation, Jane calmly explains the situation. He tells her that the government has decided to kill both him and Risu to protect the rest of humanity. He then asks her if she believes this decision is justified. But Dawoon, already in tears, cannot comprehend his words. Her mind is frozen with terror. She does not answer. The military commander, determined to stop Jane, gives the order for another round of gunfire. However, before a single shot can be fired, Jane instantly stops them. In a flash, he grabs the commander by the mouth and lifts him off the ground. To Jane, the idea of sacrificing others for the so-called greater good is nothing but hypocrisy. He believes that sacrifice should be a choice, not something forced upon someone by those in power. In the end, it is the strong who decide what happens. And now Jane decides the fate of humanity. Without hesitation, he crushes the commander in his grip. A gentle breeze blows through the battlefield, but in reality, it is Jane's power wiping out everything in his path. Buildings collapse, the earth shakes, and the remaining soldiers are erased in an instant. Dawoon watches in horror, unable to look away. The destruction unfolds before her, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Above the battlefield, reporters struggle to describe the destruction caused by Jane's hands. Their voices shake as they narrate the horrifying scene below. The government has deployed elite forces, soldiers trained to handle the most dangerous individuals. Yet within moments, they are all wiped out. The sheer ease with which Jane erases them terrifies everyone watching. The reporters witnessing this firsthand can only wonder what kind of monster Jane is to wield such terrifying power. Even though the battle is far from over, more military forces keep arriving, throwing themselves at him like moths to a flame. Jane watches them and reflects on everything he has learned. He has studied human language, their way of thinking, and the way they see the world. But now he understands something disturbing. Humans believe they are the center of everything, the ultimate measure of all things. But is that really true? All living creatures suffer at the hands of humans in countless ways. Some are killed for food, some for decoration, and others simply for amusement. Jane has lived through every stage of existence. He has seen life from the perspective of countless creatures. Even though he has now become human, he still cannot stand humanity's arrogance. Above him, the reporters in the helicopter continue their frantic discussion. Their words buzz around him like annoying insects. Without a second thought, Jane picks up a stone and hurls it toward the sky. The force of the throw is unimaginable. The stone strikes the helicopter, causing it to explode in midair. However, as the flaming wreckage falls, Jane sees something that makes his indifference vanish in an instant. The burning helicopter is heading straight for Dawoon. Without hesitation, Jane appears before her in a flash. In an instant, he shields her from the falling debris. Even after everything, even as a being who stands beyond humanity, he has learned something from them. He has learned what it means to care. The battlefield around him is in chaos, mirroring the turmoil within his own mind. His path has already been chosen, and he will not turn back now. Yet as he looks at Dawoon, he sees her crying in fear. Her tears shake something deep within him. No matter what happens to the rest of the world, he realizes one thing. He cannot ignore the people he cares about. No matter what, he will protect Risu from the hands of the government. Risu, after enduring psychological manipulation, manages to escape from the government's lab. Steer helps her by controlling several people, making them unknowingly assist in her escape. As the situation spirals out of control, the security staff activates Plan B, eliminating Risu directly. Confronted by armed forces, Risu feels something strange. She can sense the steer cells inside her controlling innocent people and forcing them into gunfire. As a human, she cannot allow this to continue. She refuses to let steer use innocent lives for its survival. In a desperate attempt to break free from its influence, Risu slams her head hard against the ground, trying to snap herself out of its control. At that moment, a voice echoes in her mind. It is Steer speaking directly to her. It urges her to look at the reality in front of her. The people she is trying to protect are the same ones trying to kill her. Steer, on the other hand, only wants to save her. It doesn't understand why Risu resists when they share a symbiotic relationship. To Steer, her actions make no sense, but Risu does not care. To her, Steer is nothing more than a parasite and an unwelcome presence in her body. Without hesitation, she slams her head against the ground again, silencing it. She prepares to do it once more, determined to drive Steer out completely. However, before her forehead makes contact with the floor, she suddenly stops. She realizes there is a better way to rid herself of this parasite. Her eyes fall on a gun lying in front of her. At that moment, she recalls the words of the state inspector. A painful truth settles in her heart. She must make a choice. If sacrificing herself will save humanity, then she is willing to do it. Despite Steer's desperate pleas to stop, Risu remains firm in her decision. She grips the gun tightly, ready to end her own life before Steer can cause more harm. But before she can pull the trigger, Jane appears. He arrives just in time to stop her. The moment she sees him, her emotions burst free. Tears stream down her face, and she sobs uncontrollably like a child. However, this emotional reunion is cut short. Seonyung's subordinate suddenly arrives, interrupting the moment. He believes that Steer is controlling Risu and sees her decision to commit suicide as the perfect solution. He fails to understand Jane's intentions. Jane, filled with frustration, grabs Risu by the hair and forces her to look at him. He tells her that she is not a threat, not to the animals in the forest, not to the fish in the sea, not to the birds in the sky. To Jane, the only real danger in this world is humanity itself. If there is a true threat to existence, it is not Risu. It is all of humankind. To him, the death of humanity is meaningless. Even if the entire world perishes, it does not matter. Risu should not have to carry this burden alone. Seonyung's subordinate, acting more on impulse than reason, suddenly raises his gun. He intends to kill them both in one swift move. But before he can fire, his head is separated from his body. Jane eliminates him in an instant, without hesitation. After this decisive action, Jane turns back to Risu. He speaks with certainty, assuring her that she will live. No matter what happens, he will protect her. Risu watches in shock as Jane kills a person right in front of her. His power, once something she admired, is now terrifying. The number of casualties rises quickly. The peacekeepers are nothing more than bodies thrown into a battle they cannot win. They rush toward their deaths, unable to stop Jane. Everything is happening in a way Risu never wanted. She screams, begging Jane to stop the massacre. She pleads with all her strength, her voice filled with desperation. But despite her pitiful cries, Jane only hesitates for a brief moment, 2 seconds at most, before continuing his slaughter. The outcome does not change. He remains emotionless as he coldly severs the head of a government official right in front of her. At this moment, Risu can no longer see the kind and innocent boy she once knew. That version of Jane is gone. Instead, standing before her is someone completely different. Someone who does not hesitate to kill anyone who threatens her. To Jane, this is self-defense. But to Risu, it is something she cannot accept. She looks at him and wonders who he really is. He claims to be the Jane she knew, but she is certain that cannot be true. The person in front of her is nothing like the boy she once called a friend. Jane does not deny it. If she compares him to the gentle, kind person he used to be, then she is right. The boy from the past was just an empty shell. The person standing before her now is the real Jane. Even though the world is falling apart, there is one thing that remains the same. No matter what happens, Jane will always protect his friend. This is the one thing that connects the old Jane to the one standing here now. As the military forces close in, Jane decides to take Risu away, but she refuses. She stands her ground and tells him that she wants to die here. She understands the danger Steer poses to humanity, and to her suicide is the only solution. Jane considers cutting off all of Risu's limbs to stop her from leaving, but in the end he cannot bring himself to do it. He does not want to cause her pain. His hesitation surprises Risu. His sudden change in demeanor terrifies her, but at the same time she realizes something important: Jane has no intention of harming her. Risu begins to waver. She becomes conflicted. Jane asks if she truly wants to die, but the more she thinks about it, the more uncertain she becomes. Jane reveals that he has lived for billions of years, experiencing countless lifetimes. He has no regrets, yet not once has he ever considered ending his own life. In his eyes, every living being desires to survive, and Risu is no different. She is lying to herself. She does not truly want to die. Jane remembers his mother's last words before they parted: no matter what happens, no matter the cost, she told him to survive. In that moment, Jane finally understands why she said those words. And as Risu listens, she understands too. Deep inside, she knows she wants to live. It is selfish, but it is the truth. And for the first time, she accepts that truth. Until yesterday, everything seemed like a lie. Jane's life had been ordinary, free of chaos or destruction. But today his hands are stained with fresh blood. Everything changes in an instant. Risu, once just an ordinary girl, has now become a threat to all of humanity. However, she no longer feels uncertain. Jane too has no doubts about the path he has chosen. There is no turning back. When more soldiers arrive, Jane wastes no time and immediately takes care of them. Determined to find answers, Jane and Risu make their way to the research room of the recently deceased department head. They need information on Steer, anything that can help them understand what they are dealing with. Unfortunately, their search is in vain. All the documents have already been confiscated by the government. There is nothing left behind. But Steer's abilities allow Risu to sense something alarming. A total of 1,119 soldiers are converging on their location, ready to eliminate them. The government has mobilized all forces to take them down. Meanwhile, the total number of military casualties has already surpassed 2,000. On a nearby rooftop, a large unit has gathered, preparing to launch their final attack. Their only goal is to eliminate the two greatest threats to the nation. However, to Jane they are nothing more than insects. He does not see them as a real threat. To spare Risu from witnessing another massacre, he instructs her to close her eyes. Then without hesitation he goes out alone to face them. And that is the end of it. When Risu finally opens her eyes again, the death toll has risen even higher. Bodies surround them, blood paints the ground, and the stench of death fills the air. Jane and Risu walk through the pool of blood without looking back. There is no need. Their fates have already been decided. Meanwhile, at the highest level of government, Defense Minister Seon-young arrives at the president's office with a request. She wants authorization to launch missiles to eliminate Jane and Risu. She explains that this time the enemy is far too dangerous to handle through normal means. The only solution is to wipe them out completely. However, the president hesitates. He knows that launching missiles will not only kill the targets, but also result in massive military and civilian casualties. It is a risk he is unwilling to take. But perhaps he is underestimating Seon-young's determination. She has not come here to seek his approval. She has come to remove any obstacle in her way. If the president refuses to authorize the attack, then she will simply get rid of him, just like she demanded Risu's execution before. Without hesitation, she raises her gun and shoots him in the head. The leader of the nation is dead. When the presidential bodyguards discover what has happened, it is already too late. They are horrified, but Seon-young remains calm. She tells them that the president has been infected by Steer and had to be eliminated. The guards do not believe her. They call her claim nonsense, but Seon-young only smirks. Nonsense or not, this has become their reality. Two of the president's bodyguards are quickly killed from outside. Their deaths are swift and brutal, leaving no time for a reaction. The president's chief secretary is soon brought into the office. The moment he sees the lifeless body of the president, he is utterly shocked. His mind races trying to process what has just happened. Before he can say anything, Seon-young orders everyone else to leave the room, leaving only her and the secretary behind. He cannot believe what she has done. Has she truly lost her mind? Shooting the leader of the country is beyond insane. Yet Seon-young remains perfectly calm, as if she has done nothing wrong. She claims the president has been infected by Steer, and she had no choice but to kill him to save the nation. The chief secretary, however, does not believe her. He knows these are blatant lies, the kind that might fool some people but not the public. The truth will come out eventually. Yet Seon-young remains shameless, insisting that Steer can spread anywhere, even in the White House or the Prime Minister's office. If that is the case, the president's residence is no exception. Hearing this, the chief secretary tries to stay calm. He knows she is lying, but there is something even more terrifying about her words. He asks if she is trying to seize power by force. He reminds her that the world has changed. This is not an era where military coups can succeed. But Seon-young does not care about the era or its ideals. She believes that leaving a monster like Jane alive after he has killed thousands of soldiers is foolish. Meanwhile, the military is unwilling to launch missiles due to concerns about human rights. Seon-young is sick of hearing about human rights. In her eyes, those only exist in times of peace. Democracy, freedom, and equality are outdated ideas. None of those matter anymore. The chief secretary is furious. Countless lives have been sacrificed to achieve peace, and now this woman wants to destroy everything by turning the government into a dictatorship. To him, only a madman would commit such heinous crimes. But as he looks at Seon-young, he realizes she is indeed a madwoman. Despite respecting his dedication to his ideals, Seon-young shows no mercy. Anyone who opposes her is an obstacle to be removed. And so she marks him as infected by Steer and shoots him without hesitation. The coup is over. Seon-young has won. But when she hears that Jane and Risu have escaped, her victory feels incomplete. Rage takes over, and in a fit of anger she fires her gun repeatedly into the president's lifeless body. Her subordinates stand in silence, sweat forming on their brows as they watch. Only after exhausting her fury does Seonyoung finally calm down. She then gives her orders. First, she demands that her subordinates clean up the mess. The scene has to be erased completely. Next, she calls for an emergency parliamentary session at the Blue House to formally take control of the government. Meanwhile, she orders the military to inspect all politicians for possible steer infection. This is just another step to tighten her grip on power. As for Jane and Risu, she is determined to hunt them down. Whether through satellites, military forces, or any means necessary, she needs to locate and eliminate them as quickly as possible. They are a threat she refuses to ignore. Once everything is in motion, Seonyoung arrogantly sits down in the president's chair. This is the moment she has been waiting for. It is a position she has aimed for a long time. She knows something dark is growing inside her, a malignant tumor forming in her body. Her remaining time in this world is limited. But that does not matter, because before she is gone, she will make sure her plans are complete. Retiring Jane's death will be the historical event that will allow her to die with the title of hero. Everything is proceeding quickly according to Seonyoung's wishes, and this is also the beginning of a new foe for Jane. Indeed, this is Jane's eternal nemesis from generation to generation. Jane is sheltering from the rain with Risu in a cave far from the city. Concerned about Risu's hungry stomach, Jane decides to go somewhere to find food for her. However, Risu is preoccupied with something else at the moment. She points a gun straight at Jane, but she also knows that with a few kind words shooting her friend is impossible. The gun is not meant for Jane but for Risu herself, because throughout their escape journey together, Jane has killed many people without hesitation. In the end, Risu, wanting to live, wants to know what Jane was before losing consciousness. She wants to know what Jane has done, and why he hates humanity so much. Yeah, the reason Jane despises humanity is simple. He has lived for too long to understand the true nature of humanity. Jane approaches and recounts his story. At some point in various lives, he has blindly admired humans and strangely many species. If young Earth seemed to be afflicted with a mental illness, what was the outcome? Jane always receives betrayal from humans and lets Risu judge him. According to her standards, after recounting his story, Jane asks Risu once again if what he is doing is wrong. However, after listening to everything and being a witness to the story, Risu cannot provide an answer to Jane. The next day, as the sun rises while Risu is asleep, Steer takes control of her body to communicate with Jane. After observing both of them from within Risu's body for a while, Steer learns that Risu is the insurance it needs to stay alive, because Jane would never harm his friend. However, Steer has its thoughts. It is not the type to stand still and accept death. After hearing the story from the previous night, Steer believes that both of them are very similar, so he wants to propose to Jane to cooperate in wiping out humanity. Steer promises Jane that after killing all humans in the world, it will leave Risu's body. Upon hearing this, Jane immediately turns around and asserts that Steer is lying. Steer thinks Jane has seen through it, so it cannot respond, but in reality, Jane is just testing Steer. Though slightly suspicious upon hearing Steer's promise to leave Risu's body, Jane cannot resist but believe him. Jane asks Steer once again if it will use and betray him like humans have done before. Despite Jane's cold gaze, Steer still affirms himself. Contrary to Steer's concerns, Jane shows little interest in the opponent's answer, whether sincere or just a trick. If both of them want to wipe out humanity, why resist? Finally, it is time for Jane to decide humanity's fate. According to Risu's beliefs, harming others and killing people is always wrong. That is obvious to her. But is Jane truly wrong? Jane has witnessed cruelty firsthand. He remembers a loving dog devoted to its owner only to be killed without a second thought. He has lived the life of creatures that were raised just to be slaughtered. He has seen the suffering, the pain, and the deaths of so many. If humans were forced to experience the same fate, he doubts they could endure it. But Risu sees things differently. Jane's story is filled with tragedy, but it is not without kindness. There was Dawoon, and there was her. There was also the hunter and his elderly mother. And above all, there was always someone willing to face the entire world just to protect Jane. His mother. Risu cannot ignore that. The people Jane has killed may not have been responsible for his pain. They may have been innocent, and to someone out there, each of those people was everything, the whole world. She cannot blame Jane for what he has done, but she also cannot turn a blind eye. She wants to stop this before it goes too far. So she suggests an idea. She and Jane should go somewhere far away where no one can find them. A place where they can live peacefully without Jane needing to kill anyone else. Her words sound like something from a book, a proposal of sorts. Jane realizes this, and for the first time in a long while, he feels embarrassed. His face turns red and he quickly looks away to hide it. But despite his reaction, he agrees. The thought of a peaceful life away from everything is something he cannot deny. As night falls, Jane watches over Risu as she sleeps. His mind drifts into a vision of what their future could be. A quiet place free from chaos. A simple life without the weight of the world pressing down on him. This is what he has always longed for. But just as he starts to enjoy this thought, the mood is shattered. Steer speaks to him, pulling him back to reality. For the first time, it sees Jane smile, and it questions him. Has he forgotten the promise he made at dawn? Jane is supposed to wipe out humanity. That is the deal. If he does not fulfill it, Steer warns him that it will kill Risu. But Jane remains calm. He does not react with anger or fear. Instead, he turns to Risu, gently leans in and kisses her. He does this for one reason, to make Steer uncomfortable. At first, Steer is shocked by Jane's actions, but then it quickly recovers and decides to take over Jane's body instead. It begins to infect his cells, trying to spread through him. However, it soon realizes something shocking. Jane has already cleansed all the cells that Steer had infiltrated. Jane makes it clear that if he wants to, he can still destroy Steer completely, but he does not plan to do that. He cannot find peace either. Instead of letting Steer harm Risu, he ensures her safety. Removing Steer from Risu's body is something Jane can do anytime. This surprises Steer. It never expected Jane to want to live so badly. It does not believe that Risu is worth Jane risking his life. In that case, Steer wonders when Jane will fulfill his promise to wipe out humanity. Jane simply turns back and tells Steer not to worry about it. He will always protect Risu no matter what happens. As for destroying humanity, Jane advises Steer to be patient. His only priority is making sure Risu is safe. Meanwhile, far away from them, chaos erupts in the government. A special parliamentary meeting turns into a massacre. Seonyong's political opponents are accused of being infected by Steer. Without hesitation, they are shot down. The remaining politicians are terrified. None of them dare to oppose Seonyong. With no resistance left, she officially seizes the presidency. Her speech is powerful and convincing. She tells the people about the massive casualties. 32,000 civilians have been injured, and 1,259 have died. Among the military, 130,000 have been wounded, and 28,000 have been killed. Seonyong blames all of this destruction on two beings, Risu and the non-human monster Jine. She declares that as the acting president, she will do whatever it takes to eliminate these two dangerous entities. With her strong words and determination, Seonyong wins the support of the people. She positions herself as their savior, someone willing to do anything to protect humanity. While all of this unfolds, Jane wastes no time. Without hesitation, he takes Risu far away from everything. He brings her to a deserted island, a place where no one can find them. Upon arriving, Risu looks around, trying to understand where they are. Jane tells her that they are on an island that belongs to a neighboring country near North Korea. Time passes quickly, and 7 months go by without anyone discovering their location. This makes Seonyong furious, as she has been searching for them without success. Meanwhile, the United Nations starts paying close attention to the situation. They begin questioning the South Korean government's actions and demand that the country take responsibility for the spread of Steer. The pressure from the international community continues to grow. Seonyong knows that if she does not find Jine and Risu soon, the strong public support she has built will crumble. To maintain her control, she must eliminate them quickly. While Seonyong faces challenges, Jine and Risu begin settling into their new lives. However, life on the island is not entirely peaceful. Risu constantly scolds Jane, especially when he fails to understand her needs. Even something as simple as setting up a hammock becomes a problem for him. Jane reluctantly listens to her complaints, swallowing his pride. Risu tells him that he is only good at stealing and killing, so he should stay still and let her handle things. As she works, she starts to realize that she has been tricked into coming to this island only to end up scolding him all the time. Jane, on the other hand, is speechless. It was Risu who agreed to live here, not him. Despite feeling frustrated, he decides not to argue. Even a powerful creature like him has no choice but to obey Risu sometimes. After struggling for a while, they finally manage to set up the hammock. Risu is delighted and jumps into it immediately. As she relaxes, she starts dreaming about drinking a cold beer. Hearing this, Jane immediately leaves to find beer for her. Risu is not surprised by his actions. After all, Jane has stolen many things from this island. Finding beer seems reasonable, especially since they are in a place without electricity. Stealing machines would be pointless, but stealing drinks makes sense. Despite always scolding him, Risu appreciates that Jane pays attention to her words, even if only occasionally. When Jane mentions that warm beer will not taste good, Risu, being an experienced drinker, agrees with him. She is not too concerned about it. Once winter arrives, warm beer will no longer be an issue. Instead, she starts worrying about how they will survive the cold. Jane, however, has already thought about this. When winter comes, he can simply carry Risu to another island where the weather is warmer. This way, they will never have to deal with the cold. As the night goes on, they share a peaceful conversation, enjoying each other's company. While 7 months pass without any major problems for Jane and Risu, not everyone is happy. Steer grows restless, realizing that as long as Risu remains alive, Jine will stay the way he is. Even though Steer has survived by living inside Risu, this quiet life is not what he wants. Steer does not care if Jine and Risu do not share the same goal. It knows that it can act alone. All it needs to do is infect the entire world through Risu's body and start a war. Once that happens, its plan to wipe out humanity will be complete. However, Steer soon realizes that its plan is not as simple as it seems. It still cannot control Risu, which means it is far from achieving its goal. Steer is caught off guard by an unexpected change. Risu's body is slowly adapting to its cells, something it had never predicted. This makes Steer feel uneasy. It realizes that if it does not take full control of Risu soon, it might lose its chance forever. Determined to act before it is too late, Steer tries to possess her completely. Just as tension rises, Risu issues a firm warning. She tells Steer to reconsider its actions. If it makes the wrong move, Jane will not hesitate to kill it instantly. Steer hesitates, knowing that Jane has the power to erase it completely. Meanwhile, far to the south, the government's satellite agency is still struggling to locate Jane and Risu. Despite their advanced technology, they are unable to track them. The reason for this failure is simple. The person responsible for tracking them has already been infected by Steer. At the same time, Risu is beginning to unlock new abilities. Because her body has adapted to Steer's cells, she can now connect with infected individuals mentally. This ability allows her to sense and communicate with them, making her aware of events happening around the world. With this new power, she gains an unexpected advantage. She can now protect not just Jane, but also humanity itself from the danger he represents. While these events unfold, something else is happening in the north. At a heavily guarded detention camp in North Korea, an escape is taking place. The prison guards are one step too late. A 17-year-old assassin girl has managed to flee. Her name is Ku Okja. The moment she escapes, Okja runs back home. Her first goal is to find her mother's grave. With the help of a kind neighbor, she locates her mother's resting place. But what she discovers breaks her heart. Her mother does not even have a proper grave. The only thing the neighbors could do was scatter her ashes into the river. Despite her sorrow, Okja finds some comfort in knowing that her mother passed away peacefully. With her emotions settled, she now focuses on her own survival. She knows she cannot simply flee to the south. She has already killed 3 people while escaping, and with her reputation as a fugitive and murderer, she will not be safe there. Realizing her situation, Okja comes up with a plan. She decides that the best way to avoid being captured is to hide on a deserted island. After spending days drifting on the sea, she finally reaches her intended destination. However, as soon as she steps onto the island, she realizes she is not alone. What she expected to be an empty and safe refuge turns out to be something entirely different. In front of her, she sees a couple sitting together enjoying their evening. Jane, as always, remains calm and emotionless. Risu, on the other hand, looks surprised to see a stranger arrive so suddenly. Meanwhile, Okja is overwhelmed by a mix of emotions. She is exhausted, desperate, and unsure of what to do next. She knows she cannot afford to be caught. As she stands there, her mind quickly forms a plan. She deeply regrets what she is about to do, but she sees no other choice. If she wants to survive without being discovered, she must kill these 2 powerful beings. Back at detention camp number 15, the prison managers search through the records. They are shocked to discover details about Okja. According to the files, she enlisted nearly 3 years ago and had spent the entire time in Unit 649. What surprises them even more is her age. Even though she is only 17 now, she had lied about her age to enlist. The captain of Unit 649 had turned a blind eye to this fact. The reason was simple. Okja was no ordinary soldier. She was a monster on the battlefield. Meanwhile, on the island, Okja moves with incredible speed, gripping a sword in her hand. She rushes forward to attack Risu. Her movements are so fast that Risu cannot react in time. Jane quickly intervenes to protect her, but Risu is still shocked by the sudden attack. She cannot understand what this strange girl is trying to do. Okja hesitates slightly when she realizes that Jane is not an ordinary person. But instead of retreating, she becomes even more determined. She makes up her mind. She will not let either of them survive. Jane notices the look of determination in Okja's eyes. He calmly instructs Risu to step back, assuring her that he will handle the situation. However, he knows he must follow Risu's command not to kill the girl. Okja, on the other hand, believes this fight will be an easy victory. She charges at Jane again, slashing with her blade. But before she can land a hit, Jane effortlessly catches her wrist. She struggles to break free and immediately launches another attack, swinging her knife with full force. But no matter how many times she strikes, her blade cannot even leave a scratch on Jane. This realization makes Okja anxious. She has fought many enemies before, but this is something completely different. She knows that if her attacks do not draw blood, it can only mean one thing. Jane is not human. This thought makes Okja even more suspicious. She refuses to believe Risu's calm demeanor. Instead, she convinces herself that these 2 are spies sent by South Korea. With this in mind, she becomes even more cautious. After failing to land a single blow, Okja quickly changes her approach. Instead of attacking Jane directly, she shifts her focus. She pretends to attack him again, but then suddenly dodges and moves toward Risu instead. In her mind, Risu is the weaker target. If she can capture Risu, she might have a chance to threaten Jane and force him not to act recklessly. However, this turns out to be a grave mistake. Okja expects Risu to be helpless, but instead of showing fear, Risu remains calm. At the same time, Jane's expression changes completely. His usual emotionless face vanishes, replaced by something sharp and terrifying. His presence alone sends a chill down Okja's spine. Before Jane can act, Risu takes control of the situation. With just a slight movement, she allows Steer's cells to spread. In an instant, Okja is infected. Her body freezes, unable to move as she wants. No matter how much she struggles, she cannot resist. With Steer's abilities under Risu's control, Okja is forced to kneel before her. Jane, seeing that Okja has been subdued, slowly calms down. His anger fades. Okja, however, is in a complete state of panic. She cannot understand what is happening to her body. She tries to fight back, but it is useless. The situation has completely reversed. Instead of being the one in control, Okja now finds herself at Risu's mercy. Having disrupted their peaceful evening, she is left with no choice but to face the consequences. Risu, unimpressed by Okja's reckless actions, decides to discipline her properly for causing trouble. Risu and Jane argue once again. Risu believes they should not kill Okja because she is still young and deserves a chance. However, Jane strongly disagrees. He believes Okja is old enough to take responsibility for her actions. Moreover, since the girl had tried to kill Risu, he cannot simply let her go without consequences. Their disagreement intensifies as neither side is willing to back down. As they continue to struggle over the decision, Okja suddenly interrupts. She watches them in confusion, unable to understand what kind of beings they are. To her, they are not normal humans. They seem almost divine, yet their behavior is bizarre. Their argument makes no sense to her, but her intervention forces them to stop for a moment. Taking the chance, Risu suggests that all three of them could live together on the island. She believes it would be better than fighting. However, Jane strongly opposes the idea. He prefers to keep things as they are, just the two of them. Before Risu can argue further, Okja speaks up. Her face is swollen from the earlier confrontation, but she still manages to express her anger. She refuses to accept pity from South Korean people, calling them arrogant fools. Hearing this, Jane suddenly becomes amused. He immediately changes his stance and agrees to let Okja stay. However, despite his words, Jane is not the one who truly holds the power to decide. The real authority belongs to Risu. With her abilities, she can read Okja's thoughts. She wants to test the girl's resolve, so she asks again if Okja truly wishes to die. Risu believes Okja has already realized the extent of her powers. She knows that with just a single movement, Risu could take her life instantly. To make things clear, Risu begins counting. If Okja still wishes to die when she reaches 3, Risu will grant her wish. However, before Risu can even count to 2, Okja breaks down. She begs for her life, willing to do anything to survive. Seeing this, Risu smiles gently and strokes the girl's head. She is pleased with Okja's decision. Survival is always the right choice. Meanwhile, back at detention camp number 15, the camp manager receives unexpected news. Okja's case is being transferred directly to the Ministry of Defense. The decision puzzles him. Normally, a case like this would not receive such high-level attention. His superior shares the information that everything seems to be linked to Okja's past military mission. Before Okja was convicted and sent to the detention camp, she was not just an ordinary girl. She had been involved in something far bigger. The scene shifts back to Jane, Risu, and Okja. The three of them sit together as Okja recounts her past. She explains that from a young age she was part of the military. However, she made a mistake that led to her imprisonment. She does not deny her actions. She understands that she violated the rules. But at the time, she had no choice. Her troubles began when she received a special mission. She was assigned to protect an important Chinese scientist. This scientist had discovered something shocking about the predicted eruption year of Mount Baekdu. The scientist found out that the volcano was set to erupt this very year. This information was a top-secret national matter. However, Okja leaked the details. Because of this, she was immediately accused of endangering state security. She was imprisoned to ensure she could not spread the secret any further. Listening to her story, Risu becomes curious. She wonders what exactly Okja did to be punished so severely at such a young age. However, as Okja explains, everything begins to make sense. The information she knew was dangerous. If the eruption truly happens, it could change everything. Despite this shocking revelation, Jane and Risu do not show much concern. At the moment, a volcanic eruption is not their biggest problem. Unbeknownst to them, a bigger threat is already approaching. On the mainland, a government satellite agency has finally succeeded in tracing their location. The search team has managed to pinpoint their exact whereabouts. They have confirmed that Jane, Risu, and Okja are currently on an island within North Korean territory. Though somewhat surprised, the team wastes no time. Their target has been found. And now the hunt begins. After the information about Jane's location is reported to Seonyoung, images of his brutal massacre are quickly sent to the leaders of North Korea. Seon-young, who currently holds power in South Korea after a coup, wants to warn the other side about the presence of two dangerous individuals on North Korean soil. One of them spreads disease while the other has the power to wipe out entire armies. However, the North Korean leader does not trust Seon-young's words. He mocks her claims, believing that these so-called monsters are just South Korean spies. To him, the idea of an infectious disease and an unstoppable warrior is nothing more than a hoax created by Seon-young. Hearing this, Seon-young immediately denies the accusation. She insists that Jane and Risu were never sent by South Korea. Instead, they had escaped on their own. But the North Korean leader does not care about her explanations. He is only interested in compensation. If what she says is true, then it will not affect North Korea anyway. Eventually, the so-called monster will be dealt with. Since South Korea is bringing up this issue, he demands compensation. Seon-young offers an alternative solution. She proposes that South Korea will take responsibility and deal with the two individuals if North Korea allows it. But no leader would permit a foreign military to enter their land so easily. The North Korean leader immediately rejects the offer. He coldly ends the conversation, telling Seon-young that he will contact her again later. Until then, she should think about how much compensation she is willing to pay. Seon-young's attempt at negotiation fails completely. Meanwhile, the North Korean leader comes up with a plan. Even though he does not believe the footage, he sees a way to turn the situation to his advantage. Seon-young's efforts to manipulate public opinion after the coup do not concern him. However, these so-called spies from South Korea could be useful. With Mount Baekdu's eruption predicted for this year, he needs a way to control the public. These spies are the perfect scapegoats. If he captures and executes them in secret, he can shift attention away from the disaster and control the narrative. It is the perfect chance to rewrite history. Without wasting time, he orders the elite Special Unit 649 to deploy immediately. Their mission is to find and eliminate the spies. Meanwhile, on the island, Jane's group listens to Okya's story. Risu, curious about the girl's past, asks why she did not escape to South Korea for safety. Okya explains that doing so would not have helped her. In the eyes of both nations, she is still a criminal. If she went south, she would eventually be sent back to North Korea, where execution awaited her. Although her situation is difficult, Okya has no choice but to survive. No matter what happens, she must keep living because that was her mother's last wish. Her mother always advised her to endure and find a way to live. Okya holds on to those words even now when her life is uncertain. Her story touches Risu deeply. She feels sympathy for the girl and wants to offer words of encouragement. Jane, on the other hand, maintains his usual indifferent expression, but more than anyone else he understands Okya's pain. There is no time to reflect further. Jane suddenly detects movement from far away. He senses the presence of multiple people approaching the island. To confirm, he touches the sea using his ability to connect with the water. Through this method, he discovers that a total of 48 soldiers are advancing toward their location. Hearing this, Okya immediately panics. She assumes they have come to arrest her. Fear grips her as she urges Jane and Risu to run away before it is too late. However, Risu tries to calm her down. But with an entire military force approaching, fear is inevitable. Okya is overwhelmed with tension and worry. To ease her concerns, Jane reassures her. He promises that she will live and keep her promise to her mother. Although Okya knows Jane is strong, she still feels that his confidence is reckless. The North Korean military is powerful, and no human can stand against them. However, that is only what Okya believes. Risu understands Jane's abilities far better than Okya does. To him, an approaching army is nothing more than a swarm of insects. He is not afraid, nor does he see them as a threat. To reassure Okya further, Jane boldly declares that no one in this world can kill him. Okya is shocked by his words. But what happens next surprises her even more. 1 month later, the world learns of the island's existence. It is no longer an unnamed piece of land. The outside world now calls it Enemy Island. But soon after, it gains a more terrifying name, Blood Island. Before the outbreak of war, Jane knows that Risu does not like violence, but he has no choice. The most important thing to him right now is protecting Risu and Okya. If they are in danger, he must kill again. Risu understands and nods in agreement. With that, Jane begins his brutal attack on Unit 649. Meanwhile, in his office, the North Korean leader enjoys a cup of tea when he suddenly receives alarming news. The entire Unit 649 has been completely wiped out. They have failed in their mission to eliminate the two supposed South Korean spies. Shocked by this unexpected turn of events, the leader immediately arranges to meet the only surviving soldier from the battle. He needs to confirm whether the monster in the footage is real. When he finally meets the soldier, his worst fears are confirmed. The terrified soldier describes what he witnessed. As soon as they approached the deserted island, he saw Jane place his hand on the sea. In an instant, numerous whirlpools appeared, swallowing the soldiers whole. The North Korean army stood no chance against such overwhelming power. Back at the battle, Okya watches in disbelief. She gasps in astonishment, unable to comprehend the trick Jane just used. The battlefield turns into a deadly trap with soldiers drowning before they can even react. Jane, on the other hand, remains calm. To him, creating a few whirlpools is nothing extraordinary. Unlike Okja, Risu is not surprised at all. She has seen Jane's power before and knows what he is capable of. But Okja is left speechless. With just a simple touch of the water, Jane has completely wiped out an entire army. Realizing that a direct attack will not work, the North Korean leader quickly changes his strategy. This time he deploys the Air Force, hoping to strike from above. However, Risu intercepts the plan before it even begins. By infecting one of the soldiers, she gains access to vital information about the enemy's aerial combat strategy. When Okja hears this, she immediately panics. She assumes that their fate is sealed. If the enemy turns the island into a sea of fire, there will be no way for them to escape. She believes that all three of them are doomed. However, her fears turn out to be unnecessary. The enemy's planes do not stand a chance. Jane easily takes care of them using his abilities to wipe out the elite army in mid-air. The pilots have no time to react. In mere moments, the North Korean Air Force is completely destroyed. Okja watches with wide eyes, unable to believe what she has just seen. By now, North Korea finally understands the truth. The video sent by South Korea was not a lie. Jane really is a monster, and his powers are beyond anything they have encountered before. However, the North Korean leader still refuses to cooperate with Seonyoung. Instead, he decides to use a more advanced tactic. This time, he sends unmanned drones carrying biological weapons. If Jane cannot be defeated with normal military force, then chemical warfare should do the trick. The leader is confident that he has found the perfect solution. But something still feels off. As soon as the toxic gas is released, Jane effortlessly disperses it with a powerful gust of wind. Risu and Okja stand frozen in shock, watching as the deadly poison is sent flying back toward the North Korean military. Chaos erupts as the soldiers panic. The toxic cloud is now heading straight for them. To escape the deadly gas, the captain quickly orders missile strikes on Jane's location, hoping to finish the battle before it is too late. But before they can even fire, Jane picks up massive stones and hurls them at the military force. The impact is devastating. The entire unit is wiped out in an instant. North Korea's attack has completely failed. The leader realizes that the situation is now out of his control. He has exhausted all his options. There is no longer any way for him to capture Jane. With no other choice left, he decides to turn to the only force that might stand a chance. For this life-or-death battle, he calls upon the full power of the Chinese military. Risu tries to send mosquitoes carrying the virus into North Korea. She hopes to spread the infection and control the situation through infected individuals. However, things do not go as planned. She soon realizes that her current power is not strong enough. While she can directly infiltrate nearby targets, her influence weakens over long distances. Because of this, the mosquitoes she controls fail to spread the steer virus as she had hoped. Meanwhile, back on the nameless island, the North Korean military remains determined to eliminate Jane, Risu, and Okja. They want to cover up the secret of the Baekdu mountain volcano explosion. With this persistence, both Risu and Steer believe that Jane will be forced to continue killing more soldiers. However, this is never what Risu wants. She only wants to protect her best friend and save the lives of those attacking Jane. Steer notices Risu's emotional struggle and sees an opportunity. He knows she wants to protect Jane, but he also knows that if things continue as they are, many people will die. At the same time, Jane will have to face endless human attacks without rest. Back on the battlefield, the warships begin firing again. At the same time, North Korean fighter jets launch airstrikes. The artillery shells are useless against Jane, but they are dangerous for Okja and Risu. Jane understands that protecting them is more important than anything else. So instead of attacking, he decides to retreat for now. He lifts Okja and Risu into the air to avoid the enemy's attacks. However, this situation is more exhausting than Jane expects. Fighting while protecting his loved ones drains his strength faster than he thought. If this battle continues for much longer, he knows he will eventually reach his limit. Meanwhile, in another part of the world, a powerful nation known as the Dragon of Asia is also watching. The leader of this country receives images of Jane from a neighboring nation. The reports confirm that the information about Jane is true. A massacre is happening on the nameless island and the battlefield is covered in blood. Even though he sees the proof with his own eyes, the leader still finds it hard to believe. However, instead of ignoring it, he decides to take advantage of the situation. He orders his subordinates to broadcast the footage worldwide. He wants to make Jane appear as a global threat. At the same time, he declares that the People's Republic of China will take responsibility for resolving the crisis. Back on the battlefield, the fighting does not stop. The enemy continues to attack. Countless fighter jets fill the sky while heavy-class battleships dominate the sea. Jane is still standing, but the overwhelming numbers make it seem like the battle is coming to an end. Okja and Risu are not directly involved in the battle, but they are deeply worried. Everything looks hopeless. If Jane keeps fighting, he will eventually be pushed too far. From the beginning, this battle has been unfair. Jane alone is fighting against all of humanity. Jane has always known the truth about humans. The reason they have survived as leaders of all creatures is not because of their physical strength. It is because they have weapons, language, and writing. But he also knows something else. Since the beginning of their existence, humans have been crueler than any other living creature on this planet. However, the main reason they have ruled for so long is because the rest of the Earth's beings never held hatred toward them. But now things are different. If humans want to push Jane into a corner, he will respond by unleashing the full hatred of nature. And when nature is angry, nothing can stop it. From behind, Jane Steer continues to speak. He reminds Risu that Jane is willing to destroy countless lives just to protect her. His words shake Risu's spirit. She begins to realize how far Jane is willing to go. After thinking for a moment, Jane makes his decision. He will no longer hold back. He stretches out his arm and calls upon all living creatures. The response is immediate. The first to arrive are the birds. For thousands of years they ruled the skies before humans took their place. Now they return to reclaim what was once theirs. Beneath the surface of the ocean, the call of Jane spreads far and wide. Sea creatures both large and small rise from the depths. They all begin to move toward the battlefield, ready to fight alongside him. A massive force of animals rushes toward the enemy. They attack without mercy. At this moment, humanity is no longer fighting just one man. They are facing the full wrath of nature itself. For the first time, humans will experience the fury of the very world they have ruled for so long. When Jane was a child, he often felt lonely. He would watch the neighborhood kids playing together, but he never had the courage to join them. Deep inside, he wanted to be part of their group, but something always held him back. His mother noticed his hesitation and understood his struggles. She could see the emotions on his face even when he remained silent. One day, she sat beside him and gently asked why he did not go out to play with the other children. Jane remained quite unable to put his feelings into words. His mother, knowing his difficulty in expressing himself, took his hand and raised his thumb. She then called out loudly, asking if anyone wanted to play with Jane. Immediately, a boy named Youngshil responded, and soon all the neighborhood kids happily gathered around Jane. That simple moment allowed him to connect with others and feel accepted. Back in the present, Jane's raised thumb still serves as a connection, but now it is on a much larger scale. Instead of making a few friends, he has become the leader of countless creatures, from birds soaring in the sky to beasts hidden deep beneath the ocean. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battle, the North Korean campaign commander, a veteran with over a decade of military experience, had never witnessed anything so terrifying. The sea churned violently, causing battleships to rock uncontrollably. At the same time, fighter jets in the sky were caught in a sudden frenzy, losing control. Everything was happening so fast that the soldiers could not react in time. Jane, standing amid the chaos, finally spoke. He recalled everything humans had done, not just to him, but to all creatures. He thought about how humans had used animals for curiosity, violence, and entertainment. They had forced creatures into submission, and even driven some species to extinction for profit. Jane had reached his limit. Now he would make sure humans understood who the true enemy of nature was. Faraway images of the battle on the nameless island were being broadcast worldwide. The world watched in shock as the events unfolded. Even the leader of China, despite his authority, felt overwhelmed by the sheer power Jane displayed. Ordinary citizens in South Korea, North Korea, and even Western countries were left in disbelief. The power they were witnessing was unlike anything seen before. Missiles flew towards Okja, but she remained calm. In normal circumstances, these attacks would be deadly, but she did not feel afraid. With Jane standing before her protecting her, the missiles seemed as harmless as insects. Even if she wanted to think about what might happen next, she knew that with Jane's presence she had no reason to worry. Jane, however, is not finished. He decides that the battle is not intense enough yet. To escalate the situation, he activates his power again, calling for even more allies. This time he expands his reach far beyond the battlefield. In the sky, more flocks of birds appear, answering his call. Beneath the ocean, he sends a message to the deepest parts of the sea, summoning stronger creatures to rise and fight alongside him. It is at this moment that Jane senses something unusual beneath the waves. A powerful creature, one that should have remained in the distant North Sea, has appeared here instead. Jane is puzzled by its presence but does not question it. Wherever it came from does not matter. If it has chosen to reveal itself now, Jane will welcome it. He extends his invitation, asking it to join his side. On the North Korean side, panic spreads through the army. The commander, realizing the situation is spiraling out of control, orders an immediate counterattack. However, before his forces can act, his eyes widen in horror. Emerging from the sea is a creature straight out of legend, a monster believed to exist only in myths. Fear grips him as he turns, looking for an escape. But no matter where he looks, there is no way out. The soldiers are trapped, surrounded by the overwhelming power of nature's fury. The world watches as the broadcast continues, revealing the terrifying creature rising from the depths. The monster wastes no time. Without hesitation, it attacks the battleships, shaking the very foundation of the military's strength. The battle has taken a new turn. Humanity is no longer fighting just Jane. Now they face the wrath of nature itself. They will have to play bloodthirsty with the sea monster commonly known as the Kraken. Humans think they know everything there is to know about, but that is not the case. Seeing the leader of China, he thinks humanity itself is under threat, and there is no need to brand it one way or another. Nevertheless, Dawoon always keeps an eye on her friends and prays for their safety at the United Nations headquarters. A letter is sent to Miss Seonyoung requesting her to provide an official name for the site of the bloody battle, rather than an unnamed island as it currently stands. Seeing things becoming complicated, Seonyoung's subordinate suggests the Department of Geography handle this name thing. However, after a short period of consideration upon reviewing the situation on the unnamed island, Seonyoung decides to name the place where Jane is wreaking havoc Enemy Island. Upon receiving the answer, Seonyoung's subordinate quickly leaves to convey the message back to the United Nations. As for the madwoman, time is no longer on her side as Seonyoung's terminal illness has worsened. Since the beginning, she thinks she can deal with Jane. However, reality proves different from her calculations as no one can defeat a monster like Jane. Returning to the battle on Enemy Island, true to its name, in just one afternoon, a bloody storm sweeps through the area above the sea with thick smoke, while below it lies the burial ground of the northern forces. The smell of smoke combined with a strong scent of human blood turns this island into a hell on earth. In every sense, Jane is already known as an extremely terrifying entity, but the recent events show that he is even more horrifying than Steer imagines. It could be said that although both are enemies of humanity, Jane is in a different league from Steer, and it is because Jane outclasses Steer in every way that Steer cannot obtain Jane's body. At this moment, Jane no longer cares about the destruction of humanity. Originally, according to the plan, Steer would usually use Risu's body to provoke Jane, but the problem with Risu is she has begun to nibble away at Steer's power. Therefore, at the present moment, Steer is gradually falling into a passive position as it cannot control Risu anymore. With the current situation, if everything continues unchanged, whether humanity will be annihilated as Steer desires will no longer be up to it, but will depend on the author's son. Just as Steer keeps pondering it, suddenly realizes after all, Jane is ready for the road ahead. Everything with Steer is becoming quite interesting. After all, it wants to see what choice Jane will make. In a place quite far from Enemy Island towards the north, a small glimmer begins to flicker on the mainland. But when zoomed in, it is not that small, because this is the first eruption of the Baekdu mountain volcano, marking the beginning of a disaster for the people of North Korea. Shortly after, a subordinate comes to report the major event that has just happened to the leader of North Korea. This tragedy is the eruption of the Baekdu mountain volcano. Everything is happening sooner than planned, but with his muddled brain, the old leader remains very calm, because given the current situation, this incident might just become a breakthrough for him to solve Jane's intractable problem as well. For now, North Korea has to bear the immediate consequences of the seismic activity caused by the eruption of the Baekdu mountain volcano nationwide. With the advancement of global information networks, news of the 7.7 magnitude earthquake caused by the eruption of the Baekdu mountain volcano quickly spread to all South Korean citizens. At first, many people do not believe that this event will have a major impact on their daily lives. However, life is unpredictable, and soon the shocks from the north begin to spread southward. According to experts, there is a unit called the Volcanic Explosivity Index, which measures the power of volcanic eruptions. The Baekdu mountain volcano is showing an index similar to that of the supervolcano eruption that occurred in South Korea in 1996. With the current situation, North Korea is struggling to deal with earthquakes and tsunamis, while South Korea is expected to suffer financial damages amounting to approximately 5 trillion won. However, as Ms. Seonyoung has predicted, the damage will not stop there. The eruption is not only causing immediate destruction but also releasing massive amounts of volcanic ash into the atmosphere. The northern regions are already suffering from heavy casualties and the effects of volcanic ash covering entire areas. Initially, experts predict that the volcanic ash will head towards Japan based on the weather maps. However, a sudden and unexpected change in wind direction occurs. This shift is not natural, but is influenced by the events happening on Enemy Island. Earlier, North Korea had launched a biological weapon against Jane, provoking him to retaliate. In response, Jane unleashes a powerful gust of wind, changing the natural flow of the air. Due to this, the new prediction shows that the volcanic ash is now heading directly toward the central regions of South Korea instead of Japan. When this information is presented in a government meeting, all the politicians in attendance are in shock. The situation has escalated beyond their worst fears. Now even the capital city of Seoul is at risk of being directly affected by volcanic ash. The disaster is no longer confined to the north. It is spreading across the entire Korean peninsula. As night falls on Enemy Island, it marks the end of the battle. Risu, who has fallen into deep exhaustion earlier, finally wakes up. She looks around and is surprised to see that the battlefield is no longer covered in fresh blood and destruction like it has been in the morning. Confused, she questions what has happened. She is then informed that the attack by the northern forces has ended. However, the sense of peace is short-lived. Risu quickly realizes that even though the battle is over, the real crisis is far from resolved. With the power she has borrowed from Steer, she can sense the suffering of many people across the Korean peninsula. Countless individuals are fighting to survive, and many have already lost their lives due to the eruption of Mount Baekdu. As she looks at Okya, who is still asleep, Risu remembers the little girl's prophecy. She now understands that the prophecy has become reality. The devastation caused by the eruption is overwhelming. Many buildings have collapsed, and large areas of land and forests have been buried under layers of volcanic ash. Looking into the distance, Risu is horrified to see that the ash storm is moving straight in their direction. Not wanting her group to inhale the dangerous smoke and ash, she immediately calls out to Jane, urging him to take them away from the island. However, Jane has already anticipated this situation and has made preparations in advance. He reassures Risu that volcanic ash will not reach enemy island because it is being carried towards Seoul instead. Jane then turns his attention to the Kraken, a massive sea creature that has appeared from the depths of the ocean. Looking up, Jane calls out to the Kraken and asks him to leave the ocean, stating that the sea is no longer a place for him. The Kraken hesitates for a moment and then questions Jane's decision. In response, Jane simply says that he has to protect his friends. With this, the battle may have ended, but the real war for survival has just begun. Jane had used these words before, but this time something feels different. Language often reveals a lot about a person, especially their values. At this moment, Jane exists as a human, and that is a big change. After talking to Kraken, Jane calls out to Okya, asking her to wake up. Okya is surprised when Jane says they are going to Seoul. Mount Baekdu has erupted, and Jane need to save their friends. At first, Okya hesitates, thinking that this is just a natural disaster. But then she realizes that Jane is capable of anything. Even though Okya is unsure, she still wonders if they are really going to Seoul. Jane decides to use the power of the sea, but when he reaches out to it, he is shocked by the response. His powers are disappearing. Steer, who has been watching Jane closely, begins to take more interest in what is happening. Sensing something is wrong, Jane can feel his strength fading away bit by bit. Risu, who has been observing from behind, is deeply worried as Jane's power weakens for no clear reason. At the same time, this moment of weakness creates an opportunity for Steer to act. As everything starts falling apart, Risu clutches her head in pain. Jane is startled to see his friend suffering. Okya also becomes concerned when she sees her sister in distress. She rushes over to check on Risu, but is surprised when Risu instead focuses on Jane, telling him to leave and save himself. Jane is confused by her sudden change in behavior. Meanwhile, Steer's presence becomes stronger, making it clear that Risu is no longer in control of herself. Steer has completely taken over her mind. Before Jane can react, Steer uses Okya to launch an attack against him. Jane manages to dodge, but Steer is not finished. Steer quickly realizes why Jane is losing his strength. It is because he has lost his purpose. From being an enemy of humanity to now questioning his own existence, Jane is no longer the powerful being he once was. To Steer, Jane is nothing more than a weak human now. Okya attacks again, and this time Jane is unable to dodge completely. A punch lands directly on his face, knocking him down. Having lost almost all of his power, Jane can no longer keep fighting the way he used to. From the moment he was born until now, this is the first time he has been hit in the face. Even though Jane is weak, Steer feels disappointed. The fight is not as exciting as expected. Everything Jane has shown before has given Steer a strange feeling. It expects more. Keeping Jane alive now seems pointless. To Steer, Jane has become useless like trash. Death would be more fitting. However, after a few seconds, Steer notices something unusual. Jane still has something left inside him. Even though Steer wants to finish him off immediately, it cannot. At that moment, Kraken emerges from the sea, preparing to attack Steer. Jane, even in his weakened state, refuses to let Kraken hurt Risu. He stops him from striking. To Steer, Jane's actions are nothing more than useless human emotions. But in an ironic twist, it is thanks to Jane's hesitation that Steer has survived. Still, Steer is not done yet. It will continue watching Jane, closely observing him, like a weak human trapped between life and death. As for Steer, it will never stop. It will do everything in its power to bring about the extinction of humanity, a goal it has long desired but has been unable to accomplish because of Jane's existence. As the evening passes in the blink of an eye, the sky begins to brighten, signaling the arrival of a new day. Okya, now free from Steer's control, slowly opens her eyes. She squints slightly as the first rays of sunlight touch her face. Immediately, she scans the surroundings, searching for Risu. However, she is unaware that Steer has completely taken over Risu's body and mind. Meanwhile, Jane remains confused and troubled. He still cannot understand why his powers are no longer working the way they once did. The thought lingers in his mind: has he truly lost his reason for existence, just as Steer claimed? Jane has always carried a deep hatred for humanity. Yet as he reflects, he realizes something unexpected. Somewhere along the way, he has grown fond of humans. Without even realizing it, he has developed a bond with Risu. He has begun to change, and only now does he understand that he no longer harbors the same resentment toward humanity as before. While Jane is still lost in thought, doubting Steer's words, he suddenly notices something strange. A lifeless human hand is sticking out from the shore. In the past, this would not have affected him, but the Jane of today reacts differently. A sudden wave of nausea washes over him as if this is the first time he has ever taken a life. The feeling is unfamiliar and unsettling. As he struggles to shake off the sickness, his attention is drawn to a drone approaching from the distance. Jane's instincts immediately tell him that danger is near. He quickly warns Okya, urging her to flee. However, to his surprise, Okya remains calm. She explains that it is just an unmanned surveillance drone. It is merely there to observe and record. It poses no immediate threat to them. Hearing this, Jane is reminded of Steer's ominous words. Steer had warned him that he would force Jane to witness the complete destruction of humanity now as a mere powerless human. The thought alone sends a cold shiver down Jane's spine. A familiar but terrifying feeling grips him, a deep fear, the kind that prey feels when hunted by a predator. He begins to tremble uncontrollably, lost in his fear and unable to focus on anything else. Seeing Jane in such distress, Okya feels a pang of sympathy. She reaches out and tries to help him regain his composure. But just as she does, something unexpected happens. A bird flying overhead drops something on Jane's head. Startled, Jane and Okya both look up. Above them, a massive flock of birds soars through the sky. Contrary to what Steer had claimed, Jane realizes that not everything has been lost. Even though his strength has diminished, he still has allies. Jane takes a deep breath and begins to believe in Okya's words. He remembers the promises he made to Okya, to his mother, and to his friends. Determined, he decides to set out and find his lost companions. By his side stands Okya, unwavering and loyal. But they are not alone. Many others remain by Jane's side, including the mighty Kraken. Together they will face whatever comes next. Jane is determined to get Risu back. News about the eruption of Mount Baekdu and the massive destruction it caused in Seoul has spread everywhere. However, the disaster is far from over. The volcano continues to release ash and debris into South Korea, making the situation even worse. Authorities have issued urgent warnings advising people to stay indoors as much as possible. They are instructed to seal their homes tightly to prevent contaminated air from entering. Those who must go outside for essential reasons are urged to wear gas masks or respirators to protect themselves from the hazardous environment. Amid all the panic and destruction, thousands of angry citizens gather at the Blue House demanding change. Despite the danger to their own health and safety, they are determined to stand against the government. They believe that this crisis is not just a natural disaster, but a result of poor leadership. They want to overthrow Seonyoung's oppressive regime. However, Seonyoung and her closest allies refuse to acknowledge the people's suffering. To them, this catastrophe is merely a natural event, and they see no reason to take responsibility for the consequences. While the public cries out in anger, Seonyoung is focused on something else entirely. Her main concern is Jane's whereabouts. One of her subordinates informs her that Jane has left Enemy Island and is now heading towards South Korea. At that moment, Seonyoung recognizes the voice speaking to her. It belongs to Lee Soo, the mastermind behind Steer. She is startled by this realization, but before she can react further, she finds herself trapped within the walls of the Blue House, now infiltrated by Steer. The virus itself speaks through Lee Soo, revealing its intentions. It announces its plan to begin its true mission in South Korea, using Seonyoung as a puppet to carry it out. Meanwhile, an emergency summit is held by the International Government Union. Representatives from 197 nations come together to discuss the urgent crisis unfolding in Korea. The topics of discussion include the eruption of Mount Baekdu, the violent conflicts on Enemy Island, and the mysterious being known as Jane, whose powers remain an enigma. Tensions rise even further when South Korea's recent withdrawal from the International Government Union and its declaration of war against North Korea come into focus. China, a close ally of North Korea, issued a stern warning to South Korea. It makes it clear that any form of military aggression against the North will be met with swift retaliation. The world watches anxiously as the situation continues to escalate. Some world leaders suspect that the South Korean government has fallen under Steer's influence. However, Jane's existence adds another layer of uncertainty. Other nations wish to stop the conflict, but recent footage from Enemy Island makes it difficult to believe that peace can be restored. With tensions at their peak, the chairperson of the summit calls for silence. A vote is held to decide the next course of action. Out of the 197 nations, 180 agree that if South Korea crosses the 38th parallel and initiates an attack on North Korea, the International Government Union will respond with full military force to stop them. The atmosphere becomes even heavier as this decision is made official. Rumors spread quickly among the people of South Korea. Many fear that international troops are already gathering along the coastal borders, preparing to launch an invasion at any moment. Protesters worry that even the slightest move from South Korea toward the north could trigger immediate retaliation. Despite the growing tension, some still hold onto a faint hope that Seonyoung will not make the reckless decision to attack North Korea. However, their hopes are soon shattered. Seonyoung gives the order to begin the attack. With Seonyoung under Steer's control, the International Government Union takes action as planned. The attack against South Korea is carried out in accordance with the virus's sinister plot. Not long after the order is issued, the sky darkens as artillery shells rain down on South Korea. The destruction is immediate and catastrophic. The country experiences levels of devastation unlike anything seen before. Buildings crumble, fires spread, and chaos engulfs the land. Amid the overwhelming suffering and destruction, one being takes pleasure in it all: Steer. It watches the world burn with satisfaction, reveling in the chaos. Steer War is the perfect tool to bring about humanity's extinction, a dream it has long wished to see become reality. Despite its laughter deep inside, Steer is experiencing a profound inner turmoil. It believes it has complete control over Risu, yet something feels off. When Steer opens its eyes and looks directly into a mirror, it is utterly shocked to see tears lingering behind its smile. It does not understand why it feels this way. Seonyoung, on the other hand, is still vomiting and retching, but she remains under Steer's control, unable to break free. Steer has read Seonyoung's diary and knows her ambitions. She wants to save the country from the monster Jane and from Risu. In doing so, she hopes to become a national hero. However, as Steer manipulates her further, it makes her listen to the deafening sounds of bombs exploding all across the nation. These relentless attacks are taking the lives of countless innocent people. The world no longer sees Seonyoung as a savior. Instead, they see her as a ruthless military dictator who has started a war that escalates into global conflict. Steer assures her that none of this will matter soon because humanity itself is doomed. Soon, no one will even remember her name. The destruction will erase all traces of her existence. Across the world, the war shows no signs of slowing down. Cities are reduced to rubble and homes lie in ruins. Countless bodies are left abandoned on the streets. South Korea is no longer a place of life and prosperity. It has turned into a land filled with grief and devastation. If it is not the sound of bombs, it is the desperate cries of people mourning their lost loved ones. Age and gender no longer matter. Death takes everyone in its path. Under Steer's influence, the land is slowly transforming into a real-life hell on Earth. In a small, nearly destroyed corner of the city, a radio broadcast plays over the static-filled airwaves. It urges anyone who is still alive to evacuate immediately. Among the debris, Dawoon sits inside her cafe completely still. She has accepted her fate. To her, everything feels like an endless nightmare. She knows that if things continue like this, South Korea will soon fall. If that happens, she will also vanish from this world. Just as she sinks deeper into despair, the unexpected sound of screeching tires breaks the silence. A car suddenly pulls up in front of her cafe and comes to an abrupt stop. Dawoon's heart pounds. She thinks her cafe will be the next target for destruction. But then something unexpected happens. A tiny glimmer of hope appears before her eyes. Looking up, Dawoon is stunned to see countless birds flying above her cafe. Their wings fill the sky like a living wave. She has never seen anything like it before. As she tries to comprehend what is happening, something even more shocking occurs. From the distance, she sees a human being lifted and carried by the birds. At first, she could not believe her eyes. But as the figure gets closer, she realizes who it is. It is Jane. Dawoon is completely frozen in shock. Before she can react, Jane comes crashing through the glass door and lands inside her cafe. The sound of shattering glass echoes through the empty building. In the chaos, Dawoon's dog leaps from her side and runs toward Jane, barking excitedly. Dawoon stands there overwhelmed with emotions. She cannot understand why Jane is here or how he has even managed to find her. The situation feels surreal, but there is no time to think. Outside, the sound of a car horn blaring breaks her daze. Little Okja is honking, signaling that time is running out. The situation outside is still dangerous, and they need to leave immediately. Jane turns to Dawoon, urgency in his eyes. He tells her they have to leave at once. He has come to save her, and they cannot afford to stay here any longer. Moved by Jane's courageous return to save her, Dawoon can no longer hold back her tears. Ever since Risu and Jane left, Dawoon has been enduring everything alone, struggling to survive in a world torn apart by war. Now seeing Jane again, she feels a surge of emotions overwhelming her. She has waited for this moment for so long, and finally hope has returned. Not far from Dawoon's place, Steer has been patiently waiting for Jane's arrival in South Korea. After pondering for a while, Steer looks at itself in the mirror, trying to make sense of its own emotions. For some unknown reason, Steer suddenly gives the order for government forces to cease their bombing. Many soldiers from the United Nations are confused but obey the unexpected command. They do not understand why the attack has been halted so abruptly. Steer itself begins to wonder if its control over humans is somehow affecting its own mind. As it has taken a human as its host, is it beginning to experience human emotions as well? However, when Steer remembers the time Jane punched it before, its thoughts quickly shift. It wants revenge for the humiliation it suffered at Jane's hands. With the bombing stopped, Okja is now able to evacuate everyone from the battlefield more easily. Despite being saved by Jane, Dawoon still has one pressing concern in her heart: Risu. She immediately asks Jane about Risu's whereabouts, and Jane reassures her that they will rescue her. This is exactly what Dawoon needs to hear, but a lingering worry remains. They have no idea where Risu is being held. Dawoon is curious about how Jane plans to find and rescue her. Faced with Dawoon's concern, Jane struggles to find an answer. Even if they can locate Risu, he knows that he is no match for Steer in his current state. That is the reality of their situation. But before they can think about rescuing Risu, they first need to survive. Their immediate goal is to reach the East Sea where the Kraken awaits. Jane knows he has to regain his lost strength. Without it, saving Risu will be nothing more than wishful thinking. However, life is not as simple as a story in a book. Steer has anticipated Jane's plan and has prepared 2 teams to intercept them before they can reach the East Sea. Before Jane and the others even realize what is happening, the enemy has already surrounded them with weapons aimed and ready to fire. It is clear that a bloody battle is about to begin. Sensing danger, Jane and Okja are shocked that the enemy is attacking without even confirming their identities. Trained extensively in the North Korean military, Okja immediately reacts, shouting for everyone to take cover while she grabs the steering wheel and makes a sharp turn to escape. They barely manage to get away, but Okja is still shaken by the fact that the enemy fired without hesitation. Meanwhile, Jane, even without his full strength, still has the ability to summon his allies. He quickly rallies them to retaliate. Through the eyes of a soldier under its control, Steer is surprised to see that Jane has not completely lost his power. Realizing that Jane is still a threat, Steer decides that it cannot afford to relax just yet. Suddenly, a fighter jet appears in the sky, swiftly approaching Okja's vehicle. As soon as Okja notices the missiles it carries, she screams for everyone to jump out of the car and run. Thanks to Okja's quick thinking, they manage to escape just moments before the car explodes into flames. Jane feels a wave of relief that everyone is safe, but his relief is short-lived. Amidst the chaos, he suddenly notices one soldier still pointing a gun. Jane quickly follows the direction of the soldier's aim. It is not aimed at him, it is aimed at Okja. Jane has only a split second to react. If he hesitates, Okja will be shot. Without thinking, he throws himself in front of her, shielding her with his own body. The gun fires and Jane takes the bullet in Okja's place. Still dazed from the explosion, Okja is frozen in shock as she watches her older brother fall to the ground. For the first time, it becomes painfully clear that Jane is no longer invincible. He lies there wounded, his body growing weaker by the second. Even though he has died countless times before, this feeling is different. Jane has always seen death as just another cycle of life, something that does not matter because he has never truly died. But now, as he lies bleeding, he realizes something he has never felt before. He does not want to die. For the first time, Jane wants to live. Nevertheless, Okja and Dawoon are just ordinary people. They have no power to change what is happening. The only thing they can do for Jane is try to wake him up. However, their efforts are in vain. The enemy is still present and both sides have limited strength. Okja and Dawoon can only watch helplessly as Jane is dragged away without putting up any resistance. The soldiers, now having secured the situation, cautiously approach to confirm whether Jane is truly dead. They are careful in their steps, making sure there are no surprises. Only when they see him lying motionless in a pool of blood do they feel some relief. On Dawoon's side, watching her once strong friend now lying lifeless on the ground fills her with deep sorrow. Tears stream down her face as she cries for Jane. The pain and despair of the moment are overwhelming. Meanwhile, Steer is satisfied with the outcome. The only one who could stand in its way is now seemingly dead. There is no more resistance. However, for every person who rejoices, another suffers. Steer is once again caught off guard when he sees Risu shedding tears for his best friend. Back at the site where Jane has fallen, the army has successfully dealt with the bird attack. The battlefield is under control. Meanwhile, Okja can only stand and watch as the soldiers place Jane inside a coffin, preparing to take him away. She feels completely powerless, unable to do anything to stop them. Although everyone believes that Jane has died, the truth is different. Jane is not gone yet. He is standing at the edge of death, caught between life and the unknown. In his mind, countless voices echo. They speak in different tones and languages, stretching from the earliest primitive creatures 40 billion years ago to the present era. Jane has lived many lifetimes, experiencing countless cycles of existence. Yet through all those years, he has always questioned why this cycle continues. Why is he reborn again and again? Why does he have power, and why is he losing it now? These questions have haunted him for millennia, but no clear answers have ever come. At this moment, memories of his friends flash through his mind. He recalls the words Steer has spoken to him. It becomes clear that both he and Steer have been given a similar power, one that allows them to decide humanity's fate. Anger boils inside Jane. He despises humans, and his emotions are no longer about justice or judgment. It is about revenge. He is filled with rage for all he has suffered. The world has seen countless massacres. Innocent people are slaughtered selfishly without reason. Jane has once thought about wiping out humanity completely. He has been judged by humans before, and he has considered doing the same to them. However, after living life as a human, everything feels different. For the first time, he experiences what it is like to be weak. He knows what it means to have fears, to have worries, and to struggle to survive. Yet despite these fears, he has continued moving forward. He has faced a life full of contradictions. From the moment of his birth until now, he has received love and he has given love in return. He has people he cares about and people who care for him. As he thinks about these moments, he finally understands. His endless cycle of life and death has never been about power. It has always been about understanding himself. It is a way for him to evaluate his own existence. Jane realizes that he has to make a choice. He has to decide his own path. With this moment of clarity, he finds his answer. He understands who he truly is. At that moment, something remarkable happens. A powerful energy begins radiating from inside the coffin. Steer, who has been watching, immediately senses the familiar presence. Shock spreads across its face. Meanwhile, the soldiers stand frozen in place, unable to comprehend what is happening. Their eyes widen in disbelief as the coffin begins to shake. Unlike them, Okja is filled with joy. She has no doubts about what is coming. Dawoon, despite still crying, feels her sorrow slowly fade. The overwhelming sadness she felt moments ago is now being replaced with something else. Hope. Then, as if breaking free from the chains of fate, Jane opens the coffin. He stands up tall in front of them. His expression is calm yet determined. He has found his answer. He has returned. Returning to Steer, he realizes that Jane's return is going to be a huge problem. Jane is the only one who has ever made Steer feel fear, so the nightmare named Jane has to end. Without hesitation, Steer orders the commander to give the troops an immediate command to shoot down Jane. Facing an entire battalion with their guns aimed directly at him, Dawoon and Okja are extremely worried. However, nobody bathes twice in the same river. Jane is not the same person he was before. Despite the soldiers unleashing a storm of bullets in his direction, Jane remains unfazed. Jane does not show any anger or annoyance. After all, the people attacking him are innocent, including the soldiers he has once killed. In the past, Jane has taken lives because he believed he had the right to judge. But now he realizes that this belief has only served as a way to justify his actions. He has convinced himself that he is doing the right thing, but in reality he has caused suffering. In front of both his friends and his enemies, Jane can only feel regret. He never wants to harm anyone, but in order to protect his friends, he has been forced to fight. This is also the answer he wants to give to Steer. He and Steer are not alike no matter what Steer claims. Back on the battlefield, Jane proves this with his actions. Although the ground cracks beneath his feet as he releases his power, not a single soldier loses their life. Seeing Jane's abilities return, Dawoon and Okja feel relieved. Jane has regained his strength, but he also knows that things have gone too far. He understands that his time is running out. With eyes that have witnessed the world for millennia, Jane can see everything clearly. The world has always been maintained by a delicate balance, almost like a miracle. He has once believed that humans are a mistake, that they have disrupted the balance of nature. Jane thought his purpose was to correct that mistake and restore the world to its original form. However, now he realizes how wrong he has been. The mistake is never humanity. The mistake is him. The ideas of balance and judgment no longer matter. They are meaningless. Right now, Jane finally understands his true purpose. It is not to save the earth. It is not to determine the fate of all living beings. It is not to pass judgment on humans. The only reason he wants to continue existing is for Risu. She is the most important person to him, second only to his late mother. On the other side, Steer feels furious. Jane's existence is a thorn in its side. Steer does not need a reason. Jane has to die, and only his death will bring an end to Steer's unease. Surrounded by artillery with countless fighter jets soaring above and tanks prepared to fire, Jane knows he has to act. He has made a promise. He will continue to exist for Risu, so he can only send a silent apology to those who are attacking him, because right now he has no choice but to unleash his power. With a single movement, he sends a devastating force sweeping forward. The fighter jets explode in the sky. The tanks are destroyed, crashing into the ground like lifeless metal shells. In the truest sense, Jane has turned the battlefield into a graveyard. At the South Korean military headquarters, officers are constantly exchanging information about the defense lines. Reports keep coming in, and the situation is growing worse by the minute. Soldiers are doing their best to hold their ground, but the enemy is too powerful. Things take a turn for the worse when a soldier reports an alarming update. The entire Dongtan defense line has just confirmed that they cannot continue fighting. The old commander immediately senses that something is wrong. Without hesitation, he asks why they have sent such a strange report. The soldier quickly explains that the Dongtan defense area has been attacked by Jane, and they have no way to resist his power. Despite this, the surprising part is that there are no casualties. Hearing this, the old commander is shocked. He quickly realizes that Jane has already broken through the Dongtan defense line and is now moving rapidly towards Seoul. The news sends a wave of tension throughout the headquarters. At the same time, on another front, Steer is just as displeased with the way things are unfolding. It has not expected Jane to move so quickly. Meanwhile, on the battlefield leading to Seoul, Jane and his allies are advancing with unstoppable force. They move forward without caring about the enemy's numbers or the weapons aimed at them. For Jane, a simple wave of his hand is enough to make the enemy step aside. Meanwhile, Okja continues to demonstrate her incredible driving skills, skillfully maneuvering through the chaotic battlefield. The enemy troops are only following orders, but they have no real will of their own. They are merely pawns controlled by Steer. Since the infantry is proving useless, Steer decides to send in the Air Force. Without hesitation, it commands fighter jets to attack. The planes swiftly fly towards Okja's vehicle, sending waves of panic through Jane and Dawoon. But no matter how dangerous the situation is, Jane is always ready to handle it. Without a second thought, he leaps off the vehicle and shoots straight toward the incoming fighter jet. His goal is to stop the pilot who is being forced into a suicidal mission. Below, Okja uses her sharp reflexes and expert driving to avoid the collision just in time. Jane, using his immense strength, successfully intercepts the jet, preventing it from crashing. He even manages to spare the pilot's life. However, Steer has already anticipated this move. It wants to see if Jane can keep saving lives when faced with multiple threats at once. Without wasting any time, Steer sends 10 more fighter jets toward him. Jane wants to save them all, but he knows he cannot. He is forced to make a painful decision. Unable to stop them all, he has no choice but to let the unfortunate pilots meet their tragic fate. Frustrated that Jane is still standing and has overcome every attack so far, Steer decides to use the most devastating weapon ever created by humans. It is time for nuclear weapons. The very thought of using such destruction makes Steer uneasy, but it sees no other option. Though it does not remember its exact origins, human records suggest that Steer may have been created by radioactive materials. Perhaps that is why it does not fear nuclear weapons as much as others do. Additionally, Steer is currently occupying Risu's body. If Jane reaches Steer, it will not matter much. Jane will not be able to harm Risu, his closest friend. After a long and exhausting journey, Okja finally brings them to the heart of Seoul. The city is in ruins and danger lurks in every corner. But none of that matters. Jane has one goal: to find Risu and save her from Steer's grasp. The final battle is about to begin. After all the efforts to stop Jane, he has finally reached Steer. However, Steer remains calm knowing that Jane cannot kill it. But Steer is also thinking about its own abilities. It has the power to move to another host to escape. However, if it does that, it will lose its immunity. After spending a month on enemy island, Risu's body has started adapting to Steer's cells. If the battle is not resolved quickly, Steer will face serious problems. Risu's consciousness is slipping further from its control, and as Jane gets closer, Risu's resistance becomes stronger. Steer has sent a fighter jet squadron to slow Jane down. Bullets rain down, but they have no effect on him. One pilot launches a missile toward the vehicle, aiming directly at Dawoon and Okja. Jane reacts instantly, transferring his strength into the vehicle to shield them from the blast. Soldiers watch in shock as the explosion clears, revealing that Jane and his friends are unharmed. Though Jane is exhausted, he remains calm. Instead of focusing on defense, he launches a powerful attack to gain the upper hand. In a short time, he clears out the first fighter jet and uses his power to save the pilots. Seeing the opportunity, Jane turns the wreckage into weapons. With a flick of his hand, he sends them flying toward the military forces. Although the army has launched a fierce attack thanks to Jane's protection, they remain unharmed despite the exploding jets. However, spreading his strength to defend even his enemies has taken a toll on Jane. No strength is infinite, and Jane is no exception. Finally, they reach the Seoul City government office. An hour later, after leaving Dawoon and Okja behind, Jane arrives close to Risu's location. However, he has already used up a great deal of energy. In this life, the person Jane cherishes the most has been his mother. But since she is no longer alive, Risu is the only reason he has to keep living as a human. No matter how many enemies stand in his way, he is determined to reach his friend. The battlefield is now a terrifying sight. On the ground, South Korean tanks are positioned ready to fire. In the sky, countless fighter jets circle above. Jane does not want to harm anyone, but he has no choice. He has to fight back to protect himself. Still, he has no right to judge anyone. Before he takes action, he wants to apologize. The moment the commander gives the order, the battle begins. But before the soldiers can fire, Jane acts first to prevent casualties. He stomps the ground with great force, causing the earth to shake. At the same time, he uses his power to create a natural barrier of dirt and rock to shield himself and the unconscious soldiers. Once he is sure the innocent are safe, Jane activates his strength once more to move forward. The enemy soldiers continue firing, but Jane ignores them. He has only one goal: to reach Risu. Moving at an incredible speed, he dashes through the battlefield like a lightning bolt, soaring past buildings to reach Steer's location. Meanwhile, Steer is ready for the final confrontation. The battle between Jane, an all-powerful being that has existed for more than 3 billion years, and Steer, a product of human greed, will finally be decided here. Before facing Steer alone, Jane stops and turns to Dawoon and Okja. Dawoon is afraid and does not want him to go alone. Okja insists on staying with him, ready to fight by his side. But Jane shakes his head. He tells them they will only be a distraction and that he needs to face Steer alone. He assures them it will all be over soon. Now standing before Steer, Jane declares that he will erase Steer from Risu's body. If he wants to, he can completely destroy Steer. This realization makes Steer uneasy. It has never feared anything before, but the thought of being erased makes it nervous. However, Steer knows that if Jane goes through with it, he will not be safe either. Jane will likely die in the process. But to Steer's shock, Jane is prepared for that outcome. He is even ready to accept Risu's death if it is necessary. Seeing Jane's determination, Steer does not hesitate any longer. It immediately uses its trump card. Raising its hand, it summons a massive horde of infected people. They charge forward like an unstoppable wave of zombies. Jane, seeing Steer use the same old tactics, feels somewhat indifferent. He has seen this before. But something is different this time. The infected do not attack Jane. Instead, they rush straight towards Steer. Jane senses something is wrong. Without hesitation, he rushes forward, trying to stop whatever is about to happen. But perhaps it is already too late. Before him stand horrifying figures, skeletons wrapped in rotting flesh. From within the mass of blood and decay, a red hand with sharp claws emerges. With deadly speed, it strikes forward, aiming straight for Jane's heart. With just a gentle swipe, Steer tears through the entire house, sending Jane flying far away. In a moment, Jane rises from the rubble. However, facing him now is a completely different aspect of fear. Its skin has turned purple, its eyes white turn black, and the red of bloodthirst now dominates. Looking astonishingly calm, Jane observes that Steer still contains Risu within. Steer instantly transforms behind Jane, frightening. But with Jane's millennial strength, he manages to dodge. Jane retaliates with a thunderous punch, sending Steer crashing through several buildings. But because Risu is still within, Jane refrains from finishing Steer off, instead threatening it with another punch. But this threatening punch proves too reckless, shattering the entire house behind. Thinking that this might truly intimidate Steer observes Jane. It sees a stream of borrowed power, precisely the power of nature. Seeing his opponent unfair in the showdown, Steer once again summons the virus-infected core to replenish its strength. Moreover, Steer reveals an interesting fact to Jane, and the idea of enhancing its strength further belongs to Risu. And what is more, Risu herself despises humanity. The more power Steer absorbs from humans, the clearer Risu's memories become. She can now recall the life she once had when her family was happy. Her father had been successful, and their home had been filled with warmth and harmony. But as the saying goes, life is unpredictable. One day everything changes. Her father's company collapses, ruined by the betrayal of his colleagues. What once seemed like a perfect life crumbles before her eyes. The family falls apart, drowning in despair. Their luxurious life in the city ends abruptly, and with no other choice, they have to leave everything behind. Forced to move to the countryside, Risu struggles to adjust. She had once lived a life of comfort, but now she finds herself in a place where even basic conveniences are a luxury. As she tries to adapt, she begins to see the darker side of society. The strong prey on the weak. Corruption and cruelty are everywhere. People step on others just to climb higher. The more she witnesses, the more her hatred grows. She resents humans for their selfishness, for their betrayals, for their cruelty. She despises the world that has taken everything from her. And as Steer absorbs more power, it resonates deeply with these emotions. Risu's hatred and Steer's desire for destruction become one and the same. Back in the present, the version of Steer standing before Jane has become even more powerful. But there is a serious problem. Risu is disappearing. If this continues, she will be completely consumed and lost forever. Jane realizes he has no time to waste. He has to act now before it is too late. He decides to use his trump card as his most devastating ability. It is a power capable of shaking the earth itself, tearing apart everything in its path. Without hesitation, Jane stomps his foot down with immense force. The ground trembles violently beneath him. Cracks spread like wildfire, splitting the earth open. Buildings sway as the shockwaves ripple outward. The entire world around them seems to shake from the sheer intensity of his power. This is Jane's final gamble. He has no other choice. A massive surge of energy begins to build inside Jane, growing stronger by the second. However, there is a major drawback to this technique. He has to remain in one place while charging it. This leaves him vulnerable, and Steer can sense the danger. Fear creeps into its mind as it realizes what is coming. It doesn't know exactly what Jane is planning. But one thing is clear: if that attack lands, Steer will be completely destroyed. It won't just lose this battle, it will be erased without a trace. That thought sends a wave of panic through Steer. It can't afford to let Jane finish charging. It has to make the first move. Without hesitation, Steer leaps forward and launches a powerful attack, striking Jane with enough force to send him crashing through several buildings. Debris scatters everywhere, structures crumble under the impact, but when the dust settles, Jane remains unharmed. He stands there as if nothing has happened. Steer grits its teeth in frustration. Even with hundreds of human vessels attacking at once, it can't land a single meaningful blow. Jane is completely unscathed. Realizing brute force alone won't be enough, Steer decides to go all out. It begins summoning more and more vessels, hundreds and thousands, then tens of thousands, each one adding to its power. But as its strength grows, something strange begins to happen. The more power Steer absorbs, the more fragments of Risu's memories surface. She sees glimpses of her past memories she has almost forgotten. One stands out among the rest as a memory of Youngtae, a boy who has always stuck by her side. He is a quiet, curious child who once asks her if there is a city in the clouds. His question seems silly to Risu at the time, so she brushes it off without much thought. But the next morning, Dawoon approaches her with worry in her voice. Youngtae has not returned home the night before. At first, Risu doesn't think much of it, but then Dawoon tells her the truth. Youngtae has taken her words seriously. He has gone in search of the city in the clouds, heading towards the distant mountains. Dawoon asks Risu to come along and help search for him. Initially, she refuses. She doesn't want to get involved. But guilt weighs on her, and eventually she agrees to go. Meanwhile, back in the present, Steer continues its relentless summoning. More and more vessels appear surrounding Jane from all sides. They charge forward in a frenzy driven by Steer's desperation. The battlefield is now completely overrun with countless human forms all rushing towards Jane in a final frenzied assault. Within the massive crowd of Steer's summoned vessels, two familiar faces appear. Dawoon and Okja. They have been caught in the chaos, unknowingly drawn into Steer's growing army. Just as Steer is about to absorb Dawoon's strength, a sudden force stops it. For a moment everything freezes. Steer quickly realizes what is happening. It is Risu. She is resisting from within, preventing Steer from taking their strength. A flicker of hesitation passes through Steer as more of Risu's memories surface. Looking at Dawoon and Okja, Steer recognizes them. These are not just random people, they are friends. This moment of realization makes the battle more complicated. Fighting Jane is already proving difficult, but now with Risu interfering, things are becoming even more uncertain. Steer knows it has to act quickly before it loses control completely. Without wasting any more time, it unleashes a powerful attack on Jane, forcing him back. Then it retreats. But for Steer, retreat does not mean surrender. Instead, it has already set another plan in motion, one that will leave Jane with an impossible choice. At that very moment, the 5 most powerful nations in the world, the United States, the United Kingdom, Russia, France, and China, issued simultaneous orders to launch nuclear missiles. Meanwhile, in the USA, people protest against the decision to launch missiles, but the president says he can do it because he is the president, and he makes the decisions for the country. His subordinates warn him that a president is not a king. In response, the president questions his subordinate, asking if he will not cooperate. The subordinate realizes the president is infected by Steer and asks to call an identifier to confirm this, but the president kills him. This makes others fear the president, and he proceeds to launch the missile. Other countries realize it is a plan by Steer. They remain alert to Steer's threat and kill its puppets in their nations. Luckily, only one missile is heading toward South Korea. Steer runs in the opposite direction of the missile's impact and says it does not matter if the missile operation failed except for the USA. It will only take some time for the missile to reach here, and soon everything will come to an end. The scene shifts to Seonyoung, where her subordinate informs her that a stealth machine from the United States is on its way to South Korea with nuclear missiles. It will arrive in 9 hours, and they must evacuate. Seonyoung remembers when Steer told her that the world thinks of her as a greedy military dictator, but no one will remember her because Steer will annihilate every human being in the world. Returning to the present, Seonyoung says, in the end, it has finally begun. Then she asks her subordinate about the whereabouts of Jane. Meanwhile, Jane has completed his technique, and he feels like a small planet. It looks like an earthquake, but the shockwave Jane creates helps the virus-infected people break free from Steer's control, resolving the difficult situation Steer created. Jane rushes at lightning speed towards Steer. Catching Steer off guard with his afterimage, Jane grabs Steer's face and slams it straight into the ground, slowly draining Steer's life force. This action is precisely the suicide between Jane and his opponent. Steer is powerless against Jane's coercion. Jane is undoubtedly stronger than Steer, but Steer's cunning intelligence makes it a dangerous opponent. It is never just about brute strength, because Steer always has a backup plan. As Jane continues draining Steer's life force, Steer questions if he really intends to die just because of a mere human. Jane confirms without hesitation that he does. He has killed countless beings until now, and both he and Steer deserve to die. For Risu, he would do it any day. Steer feels the full force of Jane's power and realizes it is a massive force of energy that cannot be resisted. For some reason, Jane's thoughts are connected to Steer's in this state, making it clear that he is not bluffing. He is completely determined to die along with Steer. Focusing on Jane's words about dying for Risu, Steer suddenly reveals that a nuclear missile is heading straight for them. Jane is shocked as he wonders if a nuclear missile is actually coming to this country. Steer confirms it without hesitation, saying that Jane has no choice but to stop it if he wants to protect Risu and his friends. By doing this, Steer creates a lifeline for itself, forcing Jane into yet another impossible situation. Steer continues by warning Jane that if he dies now, everything will burn to ashes. Jane, however, can read Steer's thoughts as well. He understands that Steer is hoping for two possible outcomes. Either Jane will die trying to stop the nuclear weapons, or even if he survives, he will be too weak for the final battle, making it easier for Steer to finish him off. Steer does not deny it and simply responds that Jane is completely right. Then it asks if he has any other option left. Jane has no answer because he already knows the truth. If he stops the atomic bomb, he will exhaust all his energy, leaving himself completely vulnerable. This would give Steer the perfect opportunity to strike back and take advantage of his weakened state. Jane is now completely trapped. He cannot move forward and he cannot back down. There is no other choice. He has to intercept the nuclear missile. Accepting the situation, Jane gives in and tells Steer that he will play along with its game. He will deal with the bombs first, and then he will kill Steer once and for all. Meanwhile, a subordinate informs Seon-young that only 30 minutes remain before the missile impacts. But many civilians are still trapped because the streets are blocked off, preventing their escape. Seon-young immediately understands that Steer has planned everything from the beginning. There is no safe place left in this country. With no other choice, Seon-young acknowledges that their only hope is Lee Jine. She asks for his location, and her subordinate informs her that he is above the East Sea. At the same time, Jane is already standing with Kraken above the East Sea, where they have positioned themselves to intercept the missile before it reaches the city. While preparing to stop the missile, Jane also restrains Steer, keeping it locked in one place. He believes that his sheer strength alone will be enough to control the situation. However, in his arrogance, he has failed to consider the true danger of the nuclear bomb. Jane looks at the drone carrying the missiles coming toward him and thinks about how Steer made such a fuss over this attack. He was a bit nervous at first, but now that he sees it, he realizes it is not much different from the attacks he faced on the island before. Steer's power is not infinite. It cannot afford to waste it on something like a nuclear bomb. Jane is confident as he tells himself that he will deal with the bomb and put an end to everything once and for all. Without hesitation, Jane charges straight toward the missile, determined to stop it before it reaches the city. This bold move surprises Steer, who is taken aback by Jane's direct approach. Steer cannot believe that Jane is actually attacking the nuclear bomb head-on. Using his immense power, Jane summons a massive column of water that pierces through the nuclear core. He assumes the task was quite simple and believes he has successfully neutralized the missile. However, he does not fully understand the bomb's mechanism. Steer watches this unfold and bursts into laughter. Instead of stopping the missile, Jane's interference accidentally triggers a premature detonation. The explosion is massive, shaking the entire sea with its destructive force. Jane is caught in the blast, his body engulfed by flames and raw energy. The sheer intensity of the explosion sends shockwaves rippling across the water, devastating everything in its path. The scene shifts to Seon-young, where her subordinate comes rushing in, calling her Madam President, and bringing urgent news. The word is that Jine has managed to stop the nuclear bomb over the East Sea. Upon hearing this, Seon-young feels a moment of relief, but her concern quickly returns as she asks what happened to Jane. The scene then shifts back to the site of the explosion, where Steer stands over Jane's burnt and motionless body. At the last moment, Kraken had used its massive form to shield Jane from the full force of the explosion. But even Kraken's immense strength has its limits. The impact was too great. Both of them were consumed by the explosion, their fates seemingly sealed in that moment of destruction. Steer, watching from a distance, immediately recognizes an opportunity. Without hesitation, it strikes, lunging toward Jane in his weakened state. In an instant, Steer's sharp claws pierce Jane's abdomen, delivering a fatal blow. Jane's body shudders from the impact as blood spills into the ruined waters. Steer has waited for the perfect moment, and it has finally struck Jane down. Jane lies on the ground, bearing the immense pain coursing through his body while Steer stands over him, staring down with cold eyes. Without hesitation, Steer tells Jane to disappear and prepares to finish him off with another attack. Jane is unable to fight back and can do nothing but endure the onslaught. However, as he suffers, the power of nature begins to work through him, slowly regenerating his damaged body. Seeing that Jane will not die instantly, Steer continues striking him over and over. But with each blow, something unexpected happens. Jane inadvertently connects with Risu. When he sees Risu, Jine immediately thinks he must be dead. But Risu looks at him calmly and asks if he is disappointed. Jane responds with a quiet, "Yeah," to which Risu replies that he has lived for so long and is too greedy. Jane, overwhelmed with guilt, says that he couldn't save her. Risu, however, reassures him that he has already done enough. Despite everything, Risu still wears a warm smile as she looks at Jane. Without hesitation, she takes the initiative to hold his hand, beginning what will be their final conversation. They shift to a mountain from Risu's memories, where Dawoon and Risu are searching for Young Tae. Eventually, they find him, and Young Tae expresses his gratitude to Risu. He thanks her for telling him about the city in the clouds because, through it, he was able to reunite with his parents. It was all thanks to Risu. The scene of Risu's childhood happiness stands in stark contrast to Jane's grim reality. Just as he starts to process everything, Risu greets him with a chilling revelation. She truly does not want to live. The lies they had told each other had unknowingly strengthened the bond between the three of them. Through their friendship, Risu slowly heals from the pain she has carried. The dark times seem to pass, replaced by moments of happiness. But one day everything changes. The bully who has tormented Young Tae for so long suddenly confesses his feelings to Risu. With her usual selfish nature, she bluntly rejects him without a second thought. This rejection only fuels the bully's anger, and his harassment of Young Tae becomes even worse. The torment extends not just to Young Tae but also to Dawoon and Risu. The three friends argue over the situation. Dawoon wants to find a way to stop the bullying, but Risu, unwilling to take responsibility, selfishly blames Young Tae for bringing trouble upon himself. Her harsh words wound him deeply. Feeling abandoned and powerless, Young Tae decides to take matters into his own hands. He confronts the bully alone. His body trembles with fear, but he refuses to back down. When the bully attacks, Young Tae instinctively dodges. In a moment of desperation, he strikes back, hitting the bully with all his strength. The force of the blow sends the bully stumbling backward right off the rooftop. Everyone sees what has happened, including Risu. Young Tae has faced his fear, but his actions are seen as murder. His death leaves a deep wound in the hearts of his family and friends. People mourn his passing, yet Risu questions herself more than anyone. Does anyone blame her? Is she responsible? These thoughts consume her. But in the end, nothing changes. The world remains cruel. Evil continues to thrive, and Risu feels like her life has ended that day. From that moment on, she believes she is only living to pay for her sins. Just when she thinks her existence no longer has meaning, she meets Jane, someone who has lost his memories. He knows nothing about her past, nothing about Young Tae, nothing about the burden she carries. Yet, as she spends time with him, she begins to see Young Tae's shadow in him. His presence reminds her of her old friend, and slowly the phrase of forgiveness becomes clear in her mind. That is all Young Tae has ever wanted, to forgive and move on. Now Risu is finally ready to let go. She no longer wants to carry this weight, nor does she want to be a burden to Jane any longer. Returning to reality, the relentless punches from Steer become the very connection through which Risu is able to transfer her remaining life force to Jane. It is only a small amount, but it is enough. With that final gift from Risu, Jane begins to rise once more from the depths of death itself. Within Jane lay a fleeting sadness, but he refused to let it consume him. Placing his hand on his chest, he made a silent vow not to let Risu down. With renewed determination, he lunged at Steer, delivering a punch that seemed to come from the heavens. The sheer force of the strike sent Steer flying back miles before crashing into the depths of a dense forest. Steer lay on the ground, overwhelmed by unbearable pain. But before it could recover, Jane swiftly reached the spot. Using his power, he gathered materials from the surroundings, cotton, leaves, and fibers, to create clothes for himself. Seeing this, Steer became furious and demanded to know what Jane was doing. Jane simply responded that he was cold. Without another word, he followed up with a punch straight to Steer's face, sending it stumbling backward. Jane did not stop there. He landed multiple punches back to back, relentlessly striking Steer with overwhelming force. His attacks were precise, each blow stronger than the last. Finally, he delivered a powerful punch to Steer's belly, sending it crashing to the ground. Steer lay there, its face swollen from the relentless assault, trying to process what was happening. As it struggled, Steer came to a realization. Jane was not truly strong. Thinking deeper, Steer began to understand. Jane's power came from Risu's life force, but in the end, it was just the energy of a single human. That was the most he could do with a life that was already fading. And now, for the first time in its existence, Steer was not a parasite. It was entirely itself. Meanwhile, Jane could feel all of Risu's memories and emotions flowing through him. Every pain, every sorrow, every lie she carried, he could feel it all. Risu had mourned more than anyone, suffered more than anyone, and despite everything, wanted to live more than anyone. At that moment, Steer suddenly dashed forward and landed a punch squarely on Jane's face. Jane stood firm, unfazed, preparing to counterattack. But as he readied himself, tears fell from his eyes as he thought about Risu. The scene shifts to Seon-young, who listens as her subordinate reports that Steer and Jine are fighting near Gangneung. Just as she predicted, their battle is being broadcast live across the entire country. The whole world is watching as the two most powerful beings ever to exist clash in an all-out fight. Jane and Steer continue exchanging brutal blows, neither willing to back down. As they fight, Jane speaks, acknowledging a truth that lingers between them. He tells Steer that they are alike in many ways. For some time now, Steer has been seeking the end of the world, and by Jane's own values, perhaps Steer is the one who is right. Humans have used and sacrificed the world for their own needs. They justify their selfish actions without hesitation. Despite this, Jane still believes in humanity. As their battle rages on, the people watching the fight react in fear and confusion. Many begin to question why the two are fighting in the first place. To them, it looks as though both of these powerful beings are trying to bring about the end of humanity. Panic spreads as people realize that no matter who wins, the outcome may be the same. They are all going to die. Frustration and terror boil over as some cry out that both Jane and Steer must die, calling them monsters. Jane, lost in thought amid the chaos, reflects on everything. Even with all this strength, he has not been able to change anything. He could not protect anyone. But he reminds himself of what it means to be human. Humans make mistakes. Humans fail. Humans regret and reflect on their actions. And through that reflection, humans find a way to move forward. Humans find a solution. Jane no longer has the strength to fight back. He stands helpless as Steer's overwhelming power presses down on him. With no sign of resistance, Steer unleashes its strongest attack, aiming directly at Jane's heart. It seems like everything has truly come to an end. But this ending isn't for just one side. Jane refuses to let go. Using the last of the power nature has given him, he clings tightly to Steer. Just as Steer thinks it has won, Jane does something unexpected. He presses his lips against Steer's. This isn't just any kiss. It is an exchange of life force. Jane drains Steer's very essence, using it to restore Risu's life. With Steer's power fading, balance is finally restored. The battle is over. Once again, Jane finds himself in the realm of souls, standing before Risu. She looks at him, her eyes filled with warmth. As his lips move, he says just one thing, "I like you." Risu wakes up to find her dear friend lying unconscious beside her. Jane's life has finally left this world. Time passes and life on Earth slowly returns to normal. However, the battle with Steer has left deep scars. Many have lost their families, homes, and livelihoods. The world struggles to rebuild, but the anger and resentment that remain are also directed toward Jane. Risu can do nothing but accept the prejudice against him. Yet whenever she remembers Jane's final words, she can't help but smile. His confession remains in her heart, giving her strength. She continues her journey, dedicating herself to protecting the environment, just as Youngtae and Jane once wished for. As she walks forward, she often finds herself thinking about Jane. She wonders what he might look like now if he has been reborn somewhere in the world. She longs to see him again. Elsewhere, something familiar stirs. A presence gentle and serene is taking form. This time there is no suffering, no pain, only a peaceful light, a sphere that contains everything. Jane's essence has become one with nature itself, watching over the world he once fought to protect. In the end, that is how it is.